This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Have our first full week in the books of the Canadian Football League season. Didn't start out great for the Bombers on Thursday. We talked about that on Friday. 3 more games in the books. Jeff Hamilton will be joining us coming up. He's batting number 2 in our in the batting order today of guests on WST. We'll talk some Jets in the offseason with Jeff as well and get his thoughts on the CFL and tease for you some new content for CFL fans coming to Winnipeg Sports Talk later on this week for the CFL season, including Jeff Hamilton. So here's a little tease for you folks. Looking forward to that. It was a wild weekend in Montreal. They had the F1. Obviously, the Alouettes had their big win. Canada had a huge game, not in Montreal, but against France, getting ready for Argentina in the Copa in a couple weeks. I thought, what a great day to have our pal Moe Khan on from Montreal. So Mo's going to jump on a little later on. And the Sea Bears made a massive signing today. We had the MVP of the league. Well, now we've got the guy that finished second in last year's MVP voting, Justin Wright Foreman, the CEBL scoring champion from last year, announced his signing with the Sea Bears today. Slats is going to come on Joey Slattery a little later on today. So we have a lot to talk about and a lot to get to. It's great to have you all with us. Shout out to all you podcast listeners and welcome to everyone with us live or after the fact on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and give a thumbs up for the episode if you would be so kind. Just before we bring in Reem, got to thank our sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. The gang at Rolly's Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Hoagie Boys on South Osborne, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend. We'll get to a why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. And we welcome aboard Garage Living Winnipeg and our good friend Pat Kanuga, who's going to be involved in our new CFL project and more on WST as we move forward. So check them out online, garageliving.ca. Tell you more about that as we get into the program. But let's welcome in Michael Remis, who I hope is all in one piece after a big weekend. How are you? How was the last few days since we last spoke on the air? Oh, I can hear him. We've got an internal mute.
Well, we were troubleshooting with Moe Khan. We recorded that earlier, and a lot of my settings, I guess, got wrecked. So you're actually first, 30 seconds. Didn't make it, unfortunately, Huss. But
oh my God, it was an amazing 30 seconds, everyone. We'll never get that 30 seconds back.
Yeah, it's all working now. So,
beautiful.
Anyways, feeling good here, ready to rock. And yeah, I'll say my weekend started off great because we spent so much time on Friday's show talking about chipped balls. And then right after we finished, the CFL announced that they're making the chip balls optional for kickers. You had, Well, so it took one game and like 4 of the league's top kickers to put out a statement on Twitter saying, "Hey, this isn't cool," and then they switched when those same concerns were voiced to them before the season. So I mean, the right decision ultimately made, but I'm just confused why that wasn't made before the start of the season. Anyways,
one other thing that's interesting, and I just saw a little bit of this, but I got a message afterwards from a listener of ours, Noah Lafort, who
he had
one of the
a lot of
ball
messages.
tracking operators.
He had a lot of messages. Dave Naylor responded. He said he did not hear, and you can read what he said, but Dave Naylor refuted that on Twitter. So.
Yeah, we didn't get too much into it. Again, there were reports from some of the guys working it that they actually weren't using the chip balls. Who knows? Bottom line is they won't be going forward with that, which is, listen, it sounds like that is the right thing to do. I don't know how much they need the chips in the kicking balls anyways for what they're actually trying to measure. And considering the success of everything that Genius has done up until this point, if we need to proceed with caution to make sure the integrity of the game is maintained, I think everyone's set with that. Everyone's set with that going forward. We will get to the CFL in just a minute. I will say this: shout out to everyone that was out at the Flatlanders Beer Festival on Friday. An awesome event, as it always is. I was there on Friday. I'm sure a lot of people were there Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. Was a nice way to kind of get into the weekend. I saw some of your pals there, AP and Seth and the gang Ream. We missed you. I guess you had a hockey game last night that you barely survived. And we now
Well, do you want to get into it? Yeah. So if you watch the show Friday, I said I had hockey, and I took a puck to the groin at the end of the game, and had to leave early. I'm still recovering, but I'm fine. But I'll say this, so we're losing 7-3. I take a puck to the uncomfortable area. I'm down on the ground, as one would be, and the refs didn't blow the whistle immediately. The other team got a scoring chance, went down the ice and got a scoring chance. I was so livid that they didn't have any compassion. It's a 7-3 game. Guys rolling around on the ice after getting hit in the balls. They didn't blow the whistle right away. It was... I don't know,
guys. Was it a puck or a stick?
It was a puck. I was trying to keep the puck in at the blue line. The guy's trying to clear it, or they're on penalty kill, and it just hit me in the wrong spot. It dropped to the ground. I had a rough time after the game, and I was still feeling it on Saturday. I'm getting better, but I just couldn't believe the refs didn't blow it right away. This isn't the NHL where guys are rolling around on the ground with a knee injury and they're letting other teams tee off. I was livid, and the other team apologized. I'm you don't need to apologize. It's fine. It happens. But I couldn't believe
it happens.
That's what I just couldn't believe the refs didn't blow the whistle right away. Anyway.
Well, you're not. I thought you might be coming in a couple octaves higher for today's show, but that is not the case. And as it was, the reason why I even know about this is that at the end of Flatlanders, I happened to be sitting down with one of Michael's best friends and another guy and his dad and whatever, just talking about stuff. And he got a text message on this incident as I was sitting with them, including a video of Reem well after the fact, just dealing with it, just leaning over in much distress. And we were very concerned. There was no one was laughing. No one was, we were just, there was a little prayer circle right there to make sure. And we did say that, he does already have 2 beautiful children. Good thing this didn't happen earlier. But anyways, I'm glad that you made it through, powered through,
survived
the rest of the weekend. Let's get to game 1 of the Cup Final. I have to say that, listen, first things first, Sergei Bobrovsky, the number 1 star, you might be able to give him the 2-star and the 3-star of the game. He was absolutely brilliant and was the reason why the Florida Panthers won that hockey game. I left that game room as feeling a lot of confidence that this is going to be an awesome series and the Edmonton Oilers are very much in this. We'll see what happens tonight in game number 2. I would expect the Panthers will be better as well. But I think that Bob set the bar pretty high. Hey, you get a shutout every night, you're going to win. No worries. But, man, Edmonton was great in that game. And I think they had a lot more than I thought they were going to have, to be honest. Certainly with possession, the amount of shots that they had, the amount of scoring chances. I think tonight, if they can get one early on Bob, we are good to go for what will be a great series.
Yeah, did they play game 1 yet? I thought that pregame ceremony was finally just ending us after it took seemingly forever for the puck to drop. I think we need to make a law, Huss, that when you say a game is starting at this time, it should start at that time. I don't want to see a 30-minute pregame show when you say the game starts at 7. I tune in at 7 and got to watch all this crap for them to start. Although it was cool, they brought out the cup on the ice. I thought that was cool. But we got to change. Why haven't
they done that before? Like, the cup doesn't even show up until the end of the last game. Like, it was very well done.
It was well done. But tell me the game starting at 6:30. No, you start at 6:30, and then puck drops at 7. Enough of these 30-minute pregame shows. We got to put a law, Huss. When they put the time on the app, that's when the puck drops, okay? You do the pregame show before then. Anyways, Bobrovsky, unbelievable. I think Edmonton outplayed Florida, but they make a couple mistakes. It's in the back of their net. Skinner, I thought he was solid, so they're going to have to try to find a way to score. And I don't know if you saw a money puck that deserved to win-o-meter from Saturday's game. It's comical.
Okay, I was talking about this. I said to Dusty on the lock shop, I said, listen, I haven't looked at the deserve to win a meter, and it does not really matter. But I will bet that the Oilers were like 70% or so.
Oh, what
was the actual number?
way up. After 1,000 simulations, 89.4% deserve to win-o-meter. And so the question is, did Bobrovsky win the Conn Smythe after game 1 of the Cup Final, even though it's for the whole playoffs, the Conn Smythe? But, I mean, he was that good. Like Hyman, how he didn't score on that power play in front. Nugent Hopkins, chances. They got to figure out a way to beat this guy. I mean, look at the shot maps. It was like the opposite of game 6 of the Oilers-Star series, where the Stars kept coming on down on the Oilers. And they won, and it was they got reversed. And McDavid did say after the game, it was like the hockey gods got back at them. So it was an entertaining game, and I think we're going to have a long series if they keep playing like this.
Yeah, and I'll give Florida credit. I mean, their 2 goals early on we're in the midst of just onslaughts of Edmonton pressure. I mean, they turned that puck over, and listen, Hyman and McDavid were just a couple of steps back of their guys, and it was an easy tap in at the side of the net. And then the pass that Bennett made to Rodriguez for the second goal, with 3 guys paying attention to him and not being ready for the play, it was a world-class pass and a great finish. Stuart Skinner didn't really have any chance on that. Other than that, though, it was all Edmonton. So, listen, that's not much of a consolation. They're down 1-0. But for anyone that was wondering whether the Oilers could hang with a team like the Panthers, they did, and then some in that game. But it certainly does crank up the importance of them finding a way to get a win tonight, because I do think that if they come back to Edmonton down 2, although still feeling like they should have at least, been tied 1-1, should have doesn't matter at that point. But they can get this win tonight, then you go back with a lot of momentum and a ton of belief that they are in the driver's seat, which they will be if they win this game tonight. This is a huge one, Reem, and I got to give Chris Knobloch, and we'll talk about this coming up with Whyno in a few minutes. I got to give Chris Knobloch some credit. He is not afraid to make bold moves. We talk about all the lineup changes that they made in game number 3 of the Dallas series. He went into tonight's game and has brought in Vincent Desharnais. Cody Ceci is going to the press box. And what is interesting about that, Cody Ceci has never been a healthy scratch for the Edmonton Oilers as an Oiler. He's been playing with Darnell Nurse on a pairing that's been getting significant ice time. Now, they were victimized on that goal with the Bennett to Rodriguez, but I mean, overall, it was a really strong game for the Oilers. It's not easy, and God knows we've talked about it here in Winnipeg. It's not easy for coaches to bench veteran players that have been a big part of teams for a long time. They'll get the benefit of the doubt. They'll get extra rope. Well, this is the Stanley Cup Final, and Knobloch obviously feels that Ceci's been struggling. Desharnais gives them a better chance to win the hockey game, and he's making that move. And it's a move that not every coach in the National Hockey League would make. So, and I'll say this, every button that he's pressed seems to have worked so far. I don't mind the move right now. It is being lauded in Edmonton, certainly by the fan base who had some issues with Cody Ceci. But as I said, benching veteran players at this time of year, not easy. And he's done it for tonight.
Yeah, surprising that you scratch a guy who's never been scratched in the Stanley Cup playoffs, or his career as an Oiler. So he's played every game, but we've noted throughout the playoffs that pairing has been scored against. Darnell Nurse, he's in the negative for the plus minus, and 5-on-5 goals against. It's not going well for him this playoffs, and those guys play big minutes, so big change there. We'll see how it's played off, but I think the Oilers, they said all the right things after game one. I mean, you just got to tip your hat to Bobrovsky and say, hey, let's just play the same way again, and you think you should win. However, now Florida just has to do that 3 more times, and they're Stanley Cup champions. So an interesting change. We'll see how it pays off, but I think for the Oilers, you got to be, you made 2 mistakes. They got they got scored on. And you got to find a way to put the puck in the back of the net, because it was incredible watching Bobrovsky. And, this is a guy who a couple years ago we said he had the worst contract in the NHL. Up there, he's getting overpaid. They signed with this big free agent deal, and he hadn't lived up to it. Well, back-to-back Stanley Cup appearances. Possible Conn Smythe trophy, although, maybe Barkov would be the favorite if Florida wins. Incredible turnaround here for Bob, who's been in the league for quite some time now.
Oh, he absolutely has, and you're right. For the first few years of that $10 million a season, he wasn't earning it, and at times he wasn't even the number 1 goalie for their team. He certainly is now, and played one of the best games of his career, maybe the best game of his career when you consider the circumstances and the stage. I think Edmonton puts a lot of pucks on him early, tries to get one past him, and if they do get it, I think they will be okay. As I mentioned, we'll talk some Jets with Hammer coming up, but I got to give a shout out to Connor. Connor was busy on the weekend. We've got 2 new pieces of content up at WST on the YouTube if you haven't seen it. A full recap of this week in Winnipeg sports. Goldie's back to 500. Matovich, another brilliant start yesterday. The week with the Sea Bears, the Bomber aftermath, it's all there for you. But the other video that I think especially Jet fans will want to jump on, Remis, that is doing big time numbers, Winnipeg Jets RFA UFA preview. And we, of course, are into draft season. Don't forget, we'll be live at the draft in 2 weeks. Brought to you by Coolbet, beginning on Wednesday, live from Vegas. Cannot wait for that. And that week, not only will we be focusing on the draft, but everything that happens on Monday, which is free agency day, Canada Day. And from the sounds of it, Remis, we heard the reports on Brendan Dillon over the course of the weekend. It sounds like he will be going to UFA. And I think that with the salary cap going up, I don't blame guys that haven't got offers that have just made them, okay, I'm signing this deal. Wait to see what is out. And For guys that are 30 or more, there's two ways of looking at it. I mean, I don't know that there has been that same sort of money there for some veteran players. And we've seen a lot of guys have to take 1-year deals or shorter and less money than they maybe would have expected. I'm fascinated to see how different this might be because of the big jump in the cap to $88 million next year to this upcoming season, and another $4 million on the cap to 92 or 92 and a half the following season.
Yeah, shout out to Connor. Some great job there. So check out our YouTube channel here for the UFA RFA free agency preview. Thumbnail, getting people to click on it, and do really an even better job on the WST Weekly. On the Bombers, Jets offseason, Sea Bears, and Gold Eyes, and yeah, the salary cap going up $4.5 million. They announced over the weekend. Times 32 teams, that's $144 million now available. That wasn't before, and I'm interested to see, who's going to be thrown down for the Jets. I mean, that gives them a couple extra $1 million for next year's. They were pretty close to the salary cap, and it was, Scott Billick reporting about Brendan Dillon over the weekend, late last night, saying, they have had conversations, Dillon and the Jets, but he's kind of wants to see what's out there when July 1 hits. So salary cap going up, veteran players, as you said, maybe trying to get that last big contract. So we'll see how it affects things. And had a big couple weeks here with the draft. You had the combine on the weekend, hearing reports of all the fun questions the prospects are being asked us, and then some big, I'm sure some big movement here coming July 1.
Did you hear that the prospects were being asked what their Uber rating is?
Yeah, I think
Utah was asking to come. So let us see. Show us your phone. What do you need to see my phone for? What's your Uber rating? Which is it's an interesting way to see. I mean, if you have a really bad Uber rating, you've probably been treating people like crap, which is not something that maybe some organizations would want. Was quite interesting. But the combine, we'll get into more of the combine, post-combine stuff in these next couple weeks with a number of draft prep interviews with some of our favorites that we'll end up seeing down in Vegas over the course of the next week before we go to WST at the NHL draft, brought to you by Coolbet. Cannot wait for that. Just quickly on Dillon and DeMello. Glad Colin Miller in there as well. Like when you look at the Jets, and I guess we have to, include Ville Heinola as a likely possibility for the roster at the beginning of the season. But as of right now, the Jets have 4 defensemen signed for next year, and 2 of them are Nate Schmidt and Neil Pionk. I mean, the other guys with contracts are Josh Morrissey, who of course has 4 years left on his contract, and 1 more year for Dylan Samberg. Logan Stanley's an RFA with arbitration, and then 3 UFAs, Miller, but the mainstays, Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello. And, I think we've thought, or I at least have been of the opinion it was likely that one of those 2 guys would be back. But the more we get into June, Remo, and the closer we get to July 1st, I'm not sure that this blue line doesn't look significantly different last year, other than 44 out there playing big minutes on the number 1 pair, and Dylan Samberg having a big part of it.
Yeah, well, what a great contract that's looking like. This Josh Morrissey making $6.25 million AAV. However, when it was signed, he certainly wasn't the player that he's become over the last couple of years. And I do wonder what's going to happen with Nate Schmidt and Neil Pionk. Are you going to continue to pay, a guy $6 million or close to it to be on your third pair? You have big minutes, as you said, DeMello and Dillon missing. I mean, DeMello was your top pair with Josh Morrissey. If he, goes, I think that's a big loss. How are you going to replace those guys? And we think Dylan Samberg is going to get a bump up in minutes. I'd say more likely they re-sign DeMello than Dillon, just from what we've heard at this point. But either way, even if you lose Dillon, I mean, these are big minutes that have to be replaced, and we'll have to see, how they do that. And we're also thinking they're going to have to replace, get a new backup goalie as well. Brossois,
yes,
he's a free agent, and James Murrell reporting Toronto very interested in him. So I think there's going to be some changes. The forwards seem to be all set, Huss, but on defense, where they could use some upgrades. They're going to be some changes for the start of next season. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's not set, certainly as we hear more and more smoke around, is Nikolai Ehlers' future. Ehlers, 1 more year at $6 million, will be a UFA in 12 months and 2 weeks. Eligible to sign an extension after July 1st. Will he even be a Jet on July 1st? Another question. We'll see what Hammer's got to say about that. The other thing we'll get to, as we mentioned with Jeff, is the full week in the Canadian Football League. Big win last night for the Toronto Argonauts over the BC Lions, coming back from a 14-point deficit. And a home win for the Stamps against their old pal Bo Levi Mitchell on Friday. And the Riders going in to beat Edmonton. I did catch a good portion of that game on Saturday. Both of those teams look better than they were last year. So a very interesting start to the year in the Canadian Football League. All right, Stephen Whyno is joining us in just a couple minutes. Let me give a shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer and remind all of you WST listeners and viewers that if there is a move in your future here in Winnipeg or in southern Manitoba, we know how stressful that can be and how much can go into it. Well, the best way you can proceed is to get the most trusted name in moving services in Manitoba. Family owned and operated for over 60 years. Rolly's Transfer to help you with your move. Get on over to their beautiful new website. Did an unbelievable job with it. Relaunched at rollys.com, ROLLYS. Top right corner, there's a request a quote feature where all you do is let them know when you are planning on moving, where you're going to, and how much you're moving. And one of the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly with a quote for you to get you on the road. And Rolly's got a massive logistics business throughout southern Manitoba, which means tons of routes, flexible times, and the best price on that move as well here in Manitoba. And of course, they'll do it anywhere in the city of Winnipeg, where they have been headquartered for over 60 years. As I mentioned, family owned and operated. For your next move, call Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba's trusted name in moving for over 60 years. Find out more and request your quote at rollys.com. A lot of people out working on yards and properties this weekend and probably needing a trip to Consolidated Supply if they haven't already gone, because of course Consolidated Supply is the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, golf carts as well. I've been doing so much work with the golf industry. They are the official club car dealer in Manitoba. Have some amazing traditional golf carts as well as some other vehicles, and they can trick yours out as well. But other great options for your property, including hot tubs, amazing outdoor kitchens, and of course, they're the leader in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. For those of you that were out of the city on the weekend, maybe getting onto the water, boat, Sea-Doo, maybe you were camping, you got to make sure you've got all your batteries taken care of. And if you haven't already, use our friends at Manitoba Battery, because not only will we be able to shop local, we get the best prices in town, and with your busy schedule, you don't even need to leave your spot. Donnie and the gang have the best prices in batteries, period, beating the pants off the big box stores. They've got 2 locations now, the original store on Logan, the new store on Dovercourt, but they'll also deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It is just that easy. Give them a call, pop by in store, or get down to manitobabattery.com to order. And just before we bring in Stephen Whyno, big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club. The Canadian Club folks actually were out at the Beer Fest on the weekend promoting their CC and Ginger ready-to-drink cocktail. You can pick that up now. It's summertime. It's a great replacement for beer if you're looking for something different. They've also got it at the Bomber games, but you can get the great taste of Canadian Club and ginger ale at your local beer vendor when you pop by. And, of course, also available at Manitoba Liquor Marts. When you are at Liquor Marts, check out the original, the OG Canadian whiskey, Canada's favorite for over 150 years, Canadian Club. All right, Cup Final game number 2 tonight. Let's head down to South Florida and welcome in our pal Stephen Whyno from the AP covering it up. Whyno, what's good, buddy? How How is the Cup vibe down in South Florida this year?
It's hot and muggy, Hustler. It's 90 Fahrenheit here. It just had a downpour. Sorry, I apologize for how disheveled I am. A downpour getting to the bus to leave the arena. The vibe in the arena is fantastic. The atmosphere of Game 1 was great. What the Panthers have done in this local market has been terrific. Maybe down the street, there's a lot of people who don't know there's a hockey team here, but here we are.
Do you get the feeling though, like when you're walking around, like away from the arena, that the Cup is there? I mean, like I've been there at times, even during the regular season. I've sort of been surprised. You go into particular bars, and there's a bunch of Panthers stuff, but this is their second consecutive trip to the Cup final. From the outside, it sort of seems like the community a little more engaged, especially with the Heat not being in the final at the same time.
Yeah, you can definitely tell in downtown Fort Lauderdale on the beach in those areas that there are people in Panthers jerseys and Panthers shirts, even a fair share of people in Oilers stuff down here who kind of made a trip out of it, because I think it's cheaper to fly down here, get tickets here than to get into the building in Edmonton. A little bit of the vibe from the bubble back in 2020 in Edmonton, where there's pockets of the city where you can really tell that things are going on, and there's a kind of community engagement, and there's pockets of the city where you would have no clue that the Stanley Cup is down the street.
Yes, well, let's not ever hopefully compare anything to 2020 again because it's such an absurd thing. Let me ask you what you thought of Game 1. Remo and I kind of went through it at the beginning. I mean, it seemed like, listen, the Edmonton Oilers showed that they can play with the Florida Panthers, but man, you play like that, more often than not, you're going to win. Did you see it the same way? And how thankful were the Florida Panthers for a certain guy named Bob?
Yeah, this is why, as my colleague Tarek Al-Bashir says, you can call the sport goalie, because sometimes you can play a great game and you run into a hot goalie and you lose. And so the Oilers understandably are confident in themselves that and Connor McDavid said this the other night, that they can hang with the Florida Panthers. And other teams have struggled with that throughout the course of the season, throughout the course of the playoffs. The Oilers outplayed the Panthers. There's no doubt about it. So you have one side very happy that they're up in the series by being opportunistic, by having a great goaltender, and then you've got the other side confident that if you replicate that 4 to 6 more times, you're going to be on the right side of the series. But if Sergei Bobrovsky never allows a goal again, the Panthers are going to win in a sweep. And it's entirely possible he never allows another goal. It's just unbelievable how locked in Sergei Bobrovsky was the other night. Even when he didn't have his stick, he's flailing around everywhere, he's stacking the pads, and he's keeping the puck out of the net. It's like there's a force field around the thing. It was unbelievable. But I think the Oilers have the right approach of, we did a lot of the right things, but we still need to make a few tweaks, which Chris Knoblauch is doing. And also the Panthers realize that they have way better in their game than they showed on Saturday night.
Yeah, we'll get to the Oilers in a minute. From a Panthers perspective, listen, Paul Maurice has famously said, you never apologize for a win, but that wasn't the blueprint, and that wasn't the best of the Florida Panthers. How did our old pal Pomo handle the result, but also what he saw for the 60 minutes?
I think he's very self-aware and realizes that if that keeps happening, the Panthers can't win the series. It's not sustainable to play like that or to be outplayed like that and win a series and rely on Sergei Bobrovsky so much, because he'll crack at some point if it continues to be like that. But Paul Maurice is sticking with the same lineup. He's not making any changes. I think there's a little bit of, this team has a certain groove and confidence to it right now, given how the Panthers played against the Rangers from basically Game 4 on in that series. The blueprint that they know they have, would really, I think, if you're the Panthers, you take a look at the third period the other night, and specifically the last 10 minutes, the lockdown style they played, there wasn't a second in that third period anyone thought the Oilers were going to score a goal. And not that the Oilers knew that, because they have to think they're going to do that. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl get put together. But the Panthers, the way the suffocating style they played, once they get a lead and once they get a multi-goal lead, that is where I think Paul Maurice is finding sort of the belief in his team.
And that's why I'm so interested in this first period tonight, because I think that if the Oilers can come out with a good start and get that first goal, I think it is fully series on. The longer they go without scoring, especially playing as well as they have been, it becomes more problematic. And Florida's ability to quickly turn one simple mistake into one the other way becomes massive going forward. Now, Chris Knoblauch, as you mentioned, Stephen, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. He has had some pretty big stones throughout this playoffs. He's made big moves. He's made significant lineup changes. But this one tonight, it from outside the market, is a little surprising. I know CC and Nurse have been maligned when they've been together and they've had some rough numbers. Didn't expect CC to be getting a press box slip for the first time as an Edmonton Oiler. This probably doesn't happen in the regular season, but it speaks to the stakes that are here for game number 2, but also the confidence that Chris Knobloch has to pull the trigger and make the decision that he thinks helps his hockey team the best, regardless of seniority or tenure.
Yeah, and that's why I spoke with Rob Dahm the other day, who coached Chris Knobloch when he was a player at the University of Alberta, and said what Chris Knobloch does is every decision he makes, he puts a lot of thought into. This was not a rash decision based on just 2 plays on Saturday night's game. Although Cody Ceci was dreadful on both of those plays, that pairing on the ice for both goals against, particularly the losing the puck battle to Sam Bennett and the easy goal. You can't blame Stuart Skinner for anything that happened the other night. But if you say there are 1 or 2 players responsible for how that loss went, it's Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci. And Darnell Nurse with other partners mixed around. He's had some bad luck. He's had some struggles. But this is the move that I think, as those of us who are in the building and talking about it, think should have been made and did not think that Chris Knobloch had the courage to make. And to bring in Vincent Desharnais, who is a bigger guy who can kind of handle the punishment of the forecheck and the pressure and the physicality the Florida Panthers put on. Even Knobloch, before the start of the series, said, you're going to see multiple guys in and out of the lineup. And it looks like maybe Corey Perry is out tonight up front. With Sam Carrick going in, and obviously the change of Cody Ceci for Vincent Desharnais, that you're right. He has the willingness to make these changes. He has said we're going to play multiple lineups. He did the goaltending decision in the Vancouver series. He went to Broberg and benched Desharnais or scratched Desharnais in the conference final against Dallas. He is willing to kind of move the puzzle around and move the pieces around and kind of figure out what the right mix is. And I think it's kept the entire team engaged, really. Instead of having just the same 18 guys dressing, they've had 23, 24, 25 different players. And that allows maybe there's going to be hurt feelings, but I think it allows guys to have fewer hurt feelings because Knobloch has done this all playoffs.
Yeah, listen, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for CC, and he'll be incredibly motivated if and when he gets back into the series. But, I mean, it ain't personal. I mean, this is about trying to win and give your team the best chance to win. And Whyno, I'm sure you've had similar conversations with some of the your colleagues that are there covering the final. Like going into the conference finals, when we talked about the coaches, I mean, I thought Edmonton was at a massive disadvantage. I mean, you've got Paul Maurice, you've got Laviolette, you've got Peter DeBoer, and then a guy that has never even been in an NHL training camp. He continues to shine, and I say that confidence of his convictions. And the fact that every button he's seemingly pressed is sort of worked out, navigating through the meat grinder that is these Stanley Cup playoffs. I've been really impressed with him, and I imagine a lot of people have been taking notice because we didn't know a lot about this guy before he got to the big stage.
I'm lucky, Hustler. I've known Chris Knobloch for 10 years. I went to when I worked at Canadian Press in Toronto, I would drive to Erie to catch up with some 97 guy who might play for Edmonton now, and Dylan Strome and Chris Knobloch. Yeah, that guy. I've gotten a chance to kind of talk to Chris from then on and kind of see how great his teams in the OHL were with the Erie Otters. And then the Flyers finally gave him a chance in the NHL, and to see what he did with the Hartford Wolfpack. I think the people who know Chris Knobloch not only like him, but respect him for the decisions he's willing to make. And talking to players and people around him, the way he delivers news to guys who are not playing or who are getting demoted, the way he is able to be a human and communicate on a very personal level with players, I think gets a lot of respect. And as Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat and others said, you want to play for someone like that. You want to play for someone who understands they have to make a tough decision. So he explains his rationale, and you respect it. And I think players want to play for him, just like, and it's a different, like, I think Paul Maurice is obviously very well respected too. He was in Winnipeg, he was in Hartford, in Carolina, here, Toronto, all the places he's been. Chris Knobloch is just such a thoughtful human being of kind of how he goes about his X's and O's, how he goes about his interactions with players, his own staff with Paul Coffey and Glenn Gulletson on it, that this is a guy who 7 years ago, I wrote that he was a rising star in coaching. It's amazing, I think, that he hadn't gotten a chance until now. And give Jeff Jackson and Ken Holland a lot of credit for calling Chris Drury and going and saying, we would love to hire Chris Knobloch, and Chris Drury allowing him out of Hartford to take this job. Because if Jay Woodcroft were coaching this team, they would have been out 2 rounds ago.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about coaches here in Winnipeg during the period since the Jets were bounced by the Avalanche. But man, the coaching change that was made this season that seems to be bearing the most fruit is the one in Edmonton that happened somewhat surprisingly early on in the season. And not too often you see a guy get that green light to go from a situation like he was in Hartford all the way to the National Hockey League and be where he's at. As far as the players go, I know you've been at pretty much all the media addresses. How would you characterize the way the Edmonton Oilers were handling a game that, to a man, I'm sure they thought that they should have won, but they didn't?
I think the right way, and a little bit of not respecting Bobrovsky too much. And I don't want to say they're not giving him credit. Obviously, they gave Sergei Bobrovsky credit for being great. But every comment from Connor McDavid to Leon Draisaitl to Chris Knobloch all along is, we can be better. We need to do things differently. This is not like, and even when Chris Knobloch was asked, do you think Bobrovsky stole the game? It's like, I think he played very well, but they're putting the onus on themselves to make changes, because there's a certain thing you can't control of a hot goalie, but there's elevating the puck. There's knowing that where Sergei Bobrovsky allows more goals. And I think there's a very process-oriented approach that comes from Chris Knobloch that the players have bought into of, yes, we need to keep doing exactly what we did in game 1, but better, because as well as they played, they didn't score a goal. And to your point earlier, I do think you're right. The longer they go without scoring, the more they squeeze the sticks tight, the more Bobrovsky gets in players' heads, because there's an aura of invincibility around Sergei Bobrovsky right now. And it was a little bit Igor Shesterkin in the last round that the Panthers had to deal with this. And as soon as they cracked Igor Shesterkin once with a kind of a fluky sort of goal, the floodgates opened. They were able to score goals. And I think the Oilers are kind of waiting for that to happen, but not necessarily waiting for it to happen. They're expecting to be able to do that and confident that they can score goals given the chances they got last game.
Whyno, were you surprised at the level of physicality in the game, or maybe lack thereof? The Florida Panthers are a team that loves to get into the trenches, and we saw some of that in the third period. For the first couple periods, they were seemingly a step behind the Oilers at the time, and I think that was sort of the Oilers dictating the level of play. What do you think of the physicality in game 1, and how do you think it ramps up, if so, in number 2?
Well, I think that's an indication of how well the Oilers played in game 1, that it took the Panthers out of the kind of style they want to play. And obviously, they want to have the puck and all of that. They don't want to have to be delivering hits all the time and chasing. But that's what they do. What they do is they inflict punishment on an opponent. They're a big team. They're a heavy team. And not seeing that was indicative of how good the Oilers were. And then the Panthers dominated that third period. So then you start seeing the physicality. You start seeing a little more of what the Panthers sort of DNA is or has been in this playoffs and over the course of the regular season. Is that's the kind of game they want to play. I think you'll see more physicality if the Panthers are able to control things. The Oilers would rather play a track beat. They'd rather have the breakaways, the skill. They can defend too. We've seen how good their penalty kill is. They've killed off 30 consecutive power plays in a row, opposing power plays in a row. But the Oilers don't want to get into a kind of a physical game. They would rather have it be skill rather than sort of a grinded out sort of game. But if the Oilers are able to continue that, it's going to be hard for the Panthers to inflict that sort of physicality they like.
Stephen Whyno's with us from the Cup Final on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Whyno, I'm sure this got a lot of talk in the conversations over a couple of cold ones last night. What's up with the Capitals buying Cap Friendly?
Yeah, it's been the talk of everything, and to be honest, I have not made the phone calls to even figure out what is going on here. My guess on this, and an educated guess on this, is there's a lot of information that is out there on Cap Friendly that teams use around the league, and this is an advantage the Capitals are trying to take for themselves of getting that information, that salary information that is available, basically freezing it and keeping the rest of the league from having it. And I think it's going to lead to Puckpedia, run by Hart Levine, being sort of the next site for people to go to, members of the public, and even teams, because this is a site that to be fair, all of us as writers, people following the league, have used and teams used. Everyone has their own kind of cap numbers and cap person and their internal sort of data. But people to look up someone's contract status, a no move clause, a no trade clause, it is very readily available, and something that I would assume Ted Leonsis and Dick Patrick and Brian McClellan with the Washington Capitals would like to have themselves and take away from the league's other 31 teams.
I mean, from a league perspective, from a PA perspective, I mean, this stuff should be readily available, shouldn't it?
I think so. And Gary Bettman has said in the past he does not believe a majority of fans necessarily care about salary cap and those sort of things. For the hardcore people, they do. And I do wonder if this leads the PA or someone else to sort of, just like Cap Geek went away and Cap Friendly became the kind of response to that going away, that Puckpedia or some of these other sites will kind of creep up and become more used, because there's got to be somewhere for this information to come from.
Yeah, and listen, I'll disagree with the commission on that, or maybe it's just a real simplification, because, I mean, yeah, when you're watching a game, is every fan talking about how much a guy makes? Well, no, but in today's NHL, the second you're talking about, how would that guy look on your team, or what would you have to get away? You cannot have that conversation without looking at a guy's contract and figuring what he's on the books for, how long he's on the books for. And listen, that's a reality of the National Hockey League that prevents a ton of deals to be made. But when you're having the conversation, you cannot have any sort of an educated convo without discussing what these players come when it comes to the ledger for the accountants.
Yeah, it's a hard cap league, and it does matter. That's why I really do think, whether it's people going to Puckpedia or another site, that it's not like this information is going to go away. The Cap Friendly folks have done a great job of cultivating league sources, of getting this information out there. I wonder how much of going on right now among teams around the league is almost like screenshotting what exists right now and trying to almost archive the information that exists, because this is a legitimate conversation. We're going into an offseason where we could see a bunch of trades and teams have to make the money work. The cap's going up to $88 million, but this is still a flat cap. This is still a hard cap league where you can't go over it. You've got teams with cap overages and this sort of thing that, there's a science to putting this together that even forget about us. I mean, this is a great tool for anybody who cares about hockey so much, but teams are going to need to have some place to do this, whether it's internal or external.
Well, and I don't know, maybe I'm just naive. I assumed that everything that we get on Cap Friendly is in a database in the National Hockey League that all the teams would have access to and would use. But maybe not. From the sounds of it, what's happening, maybe that isn't the case.
It's not the case. And there is no one internal database for all of this stuff. That is what is quite incredible. The general managers get a book that has salaries and that sort of information in it. But there's a lot of this league that is still kind of a word of mouth sort of situation.
It's wild. What are the other heavy topics outside of the obvious final when the gang all gets together for the Cup Final, looking ahead to the draft in Vegas, free agency? I mean, what are some of the other stories that have been of most interest to the collected media outside of the series?
Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs, as always, the chaotic situation that's going on there, and really kind of how many changes the Leafs are going to make. And obviously there's a lot of talk about the playoffs and how the Rangers fell short and other teams didn't get to this point. But the Leafs, the hiring of Craig Berube, and kind of what happens with Mitch Marner, and he's got a full no move clause that he can control whether he wants to stay there or not, whether there's a chance of them making a kind of an agreement on a trade with a team, Brad Treliving, and then going and to Mitch Marner and saying, will you accept this trade? This is the Nashville Predators or the LA Kings or the Seattle Kraken or whichever team, the Washington Capitals, are willing to offer you X. Will you do this? And I think we're going to find this out quickly, because if this Stanley Cup Final goes to June 24th, the draft is 4 days later. This is going to be just an absolute sprint from now until July 1st and a little bit beyond in free agency, because with the season starting later, the playoffs starting later, the cup being handed out later, the latest of any non-lockout season, I believe, in NHL history, that this is all going to happen very quickly.
Hey, before we go, I've got to ask you about the newest team, Utah. Like they have, when you look at what the Coyotes, or the former Coyotes, I guess now, have banked when it comes to draft capital. They have 10 second rounders in the next 3 drafts. They've got all their first round picks. They've got a ton of third rounders as well. And they've got a lot of younger players that have been picked that are in the mix moving forward. What do you think Utah does when it comes to building this team? Because I think they'd like to be much better. I think they certainly have the capital to make some splashy moves and add to it. I mean, how much of a central figure is Armstrong, Ryan Smith, the Utah HC, until they have a name, going to be over, the next couple of weeks as soon as we get done with the final?
Well, it's like this team has seemingly been potential for so long that it's time for them to turn potential into reality. Remember back when the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore and then they won a championship. The Quebec Nordiques moved to Denver, win a championship. There's something to be said for the jolt that is given by a relocation, in this case, a sale of a team, that all of a sudden Ryan Smith doesn't want. The fans who are showing up to Utah don't care about the prospects who are 3 or 4 years away. They want to see a winning product right away. And I'm fascinated to see how much of a splash Bill Armstrong wants to make in terms of, can he convince players to move to Salt Lake City, to buy into what they're selling there and living in Utah and all of those things, and how much of it he does via trade, using some of those draft picks to either package them and move up, get some more prospects, but also to get NHL players and be winning now. And you can see the ingredients. You can see Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley, even Connor Ingram showing himself to be a full-time NHL starting goaltender, that it's now time. It's go time for Utah of trying to win now and be in a playoff mix. Maybe not contending for the Stanley Cup right away, but this is certainly a team that, like the Seattle Kraken, like the Vegas Golden Knights with expansion. They didn't get the expansion draft part of it, but with a new fan base, trying to get people into the game, you're drawing in people. They're doing great on season ticket sales and all of those things, but to keep people, you've got to win. And I think Bill Armstrong understands that winning sooner than later is part of his directive now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about the possibility of Nikolai Ehlers on the move, and I mean, that's the sort of guy I could see them acquiring, signing to an extension. They need a couple guys to come in, bring fans out of their seats, be star players, and help them move forward. And certainly when we get to Vegas, and I look forward to seeing you there, that is going to be a team that we'll be paying very close attention to. Whyno, thanks as always for doing this. Enjoy the game. And enjoy that long flight. Do you guys get chartered from Florida to Edmonton, or what's the milk run like for your travel between Fort Lauderdale and Edmonton, Alberta?
You're gonna love this. Our colleague Sean Reynolds has 2 connections. I don't connect twice to go to the moon, but I do have Fort Lauderdale to Montreal, a 5-hour layover in Montreal, and then the cross-country flight. So if anybody's at the Montreal airport tomorrow, come say hello.
How's Rennie doing?
He's doing fantastic. He's put in a nice shift at the infield the other night post game. Doing great work as always during the day, and a part of our game-winning goal pool, and a good person to have in the room.
Hey, listen, love Ren, and I'm glad that he's doing that. Even if he has 2 connections and an incredible milk run, I'm sure we'll get him on a little later on this week. Steven, enjoy Game 2 tonight and the rest of the finals. I'll look forward to seeing you for a couple pops down in Vegas in a few weeks.
Thanks, Hustler. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. There's Stephen Whyno. You can give him a follow on Twitter at @SWhyno. And of course, you can read his copy in papers around North America reporting on the Stanley Cup for the Associated Press. Well, man, it was was so great to get out to the stadium on Thursday. Game notwithstanding, in the first game as Princess Auto Stadium, I will say this: the crowd, a 10 out of 10. The weather turned out to be like an 8 or 9 out of 10. And man, does the stadium look beautiful with all that new signage. Great to have Princess Auto, even a bigger part of Blue Bomber football this year. And I do remind you all, June 21st, next time we'll be back there, Friday, the kick off the summer. Get out there early, Princess Auto tailgate zone, 5:30 p.m. before the 7:30 kickoff. $5 beers, $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, other new food options this year and some great new inflatables for the kids and the families. So make sure to do that. And don't forget, Princess Auto and the Bombers welcome everybody to Princess Auto Stadium July 1st for the big Canada Day extravaganza beginning at noon. Bring the whole family down, inflatables, food trucks, programming for the kids throughout the day, and then the main stage entertainment gets going on at 3, headlined by Doc Walker, the Sam Roberts Band, fireworks as well. And again, it's all 100% free. If you are able to bring a donation for Harvest, they'd appreciate it. But most importantly, stick it in your calendar right now. July 1st, Canada Day, Princess Auto Stadium will be the place to be. Got to shout out our friends at Wallace & Wallace. Man, they're busy right now, as you would imagine, as the fencing and overhead door specialists in Manitoba for like 70 years. They've been doing it since 1946, serving Manitobans. And the bottom line is you've seen their fences and trucks all over the city for a reason. If you need the security and protection of a new fence or have wintered a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they've also got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give them a buzz at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them online at wallacefences.com. or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. Fellas, I know some weddings on the weekend already. Guys, if you're looking ahead to summer and realize, whoa, I need to up my menswear game, there's a lot going on. A quick trip to F Apparel is what you need to do ASAP, because F Apparel is the #1 spot for men's custom clothing, including custom suits beginning at $400, along with golf pants, chinos, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are in a wedding party coming up, make sure to talk to the guys at F about a 15% discount when you get your suits at F. And they've got a great deal right now for high school grads for 2024. It's all there down at 190 Smith Street. Find out more and make an appointment online at F. That's EPHapparel.com. And man, we had some good fishing talk on the weekend. I'm counting down the days to get to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge again. If you are considering or looking for a world-class fly-in fishing option right here in Manitoba, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens is the spot, with world-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the Terren family and the Aikens team. Get over to aikenslake.com. Find out everything that awaits you at Aikens and inquire as to remaining availability for the rest of the 2024 fishing season. aikenslake.com, and again, at Aikens Lake on all of your social platforms. All right, let's get to it. Hammer time on a Monday here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press joins us. What is up, my man? It's great to talk to you as always.
I was just checking on my, I guess, my computer video. Something's bothering me in my right eye, so I don't really know what's up with that. Hopefully it gets better. But other than that, man, I'm swimmingly. I can't wait for, it was a great weekend of CFL football, and I can't wait for this week.
Well, it was a hell of a way to kick off the season, the game on Thursday notwithstanding. And, I mentioned this a little earlier, but I will give a little bit of a tease. I know there's many WSTers that particularly love Monday shows because we get a big dose of hammer. We're going to be, we're doubling down on that, if you will. And listen, in this segment, we'll get to some of the games. We've also got a lot of Jets and other stories to do it, to get to together. But really looking forward to starting off later on this week, kicking off a new venture on WST with you, who, not to blow smoke up your ass too much, but have been doing an incredible job covering the entire Canadian Football League. Some new CFL content from Winnipeg Sports Talk, not just focusing on the Bombers, but the big stories around the league. In a lot of ways, sort of an audio and video version of the great CFL rundown you've been doing. So I cannot wait to get going with you on that again. You're going to be heading out to Ottawa, but we'll make it work this week and have a little more CFL content for people here in Winnipeg and around the league with myself and yours truly, who's been, I mean, really one of the leaders when it comes to covering this league from all angles.
How kind of you, Huss. I appreciate that and really excited, man. I mean, I always love coming on here and chatting with you and talking with you and debating with you and proving you wrong. In the very odd moment, you catch me where I don't seem to have an answer for things and need to, look at Remo to hit that escape button. But yeah, man, absolutely. I feel like CFL coverage is, I think people here in the city get a good dose of it for sure. Absolutely. Winnipeg being the market that it is and having the fan base that it has, not just here, but across the country. It's a really great opportunity to talk the game, chop, the big stories, the big, most drama. Anybody who covers this league or watches this league rather, knows how crazy the CFL can get. We're already 1 week in and there's a kicking controversy, a ball controversy. There's opportunities to talk about this great sport, this great league. And I certainly look forward to revealing more and really hashing it out with you, man, on 3 Down Football week to week.
It's going to be great. We're going to plan to kick that off right after WST on Wednesday. But we'll have more information. We'll have a dedicated podcast feed for that as well. So stay tuned to WST for all of that and look forward to it a little later on this week. Part of that every week we'll do a little bit of a look ahead. I can kind of come at you from, we'll certainly look at the lines and whatnot, but, we'll really be focusing on, what is moving the needle around the Canadian Football League. This week, it was all just about the games. We've had a little bit of time to digest Thursday night. What are your takeaways from the Bombers' underwhelming start to the season on the field on a night where just about everything else was great? Just the home team had a very uncharacteristic poor performance at home.
Yeah, as you mentioned, not a lot of stinkers at Princess Auto Stadium, new Princess Auto Stadium. But before that, certainly was a place where the Bombers would come and steal the other team's lunch money. I mean, there was, I don't know if it was in last year or the year before, where they opened, with a loss to BC at home and then railed off 8 straight victories. So that was a small hiccup.
That was last year, yeah.
That was last year.
An ass kicking.
And we'll see where that. And it was also against a team. While I understand the BC Lions were not in the competing with the Bombers for the Grey Cup like this case was, where obviously this was the Grey Cup rematch. But it was another game where the Bombers, were supposed to show up and use that chip, because everybody, much like this season, was looking at the BC Lions as the team to beat. And then, of course, this year, same story. Montreal Alouettes are the defending champs, and they'll be the defending champs until somebody knocks them off that ledge this season, if they can. And so there was another huge game for the Bombers to show up and compete with and have an opportunity for retribution in this case, and they laid an egg. And whether you want to call it a lack of preparation, certainly a lack of execution, it was interesting and not all that surprising to hear head coach Mike O'Shea say after the game, put a lot of this loss on his and the coaching staff's shoulders to get this team ready and prepared come kickoff. But couple things in this, Huss. One, this whole idea that veterans don't need reps. Yeah, they do need reps. They absolutely do. Now, maybe they don't need reps in week 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, somewhere in between the middle of the season where they've already had a few games under their belt and they're nursing something, and maybe they don't need to practice that week to be able to perform in a game. But you don't sit out 3 weeks of training camp and pretend like you're in a good position heading into week 1. And that was the case for a lot of players. Of course, it was the case for Brady Oliveira. It was the case mostly for Nick Dembski, who did return, but, didn't have, much of camp, was sitting out. Same story for Patrick Neufeld. Brandon Alexander never returned until, that first week getting ready for the game, week 1's game. And So I think all those things, added up to a pretty lousy performance from Winnipeg. I wouldn't say it was necessarily predictable, but I do think with the benefit of hindsight, you can look at some of those things like the lack of reps in training camp. And when you look at the offensive line and the new bodies, it's important that those guys get those weeks to work as a 5-man unit. It's important that the quarterback of the secondary and Brandon Alexander is there during training camp to relay the communication. We all know how important communication is in the secondary. So to just think that these guys could just drop in week 1, get up to speed in three days. Well, it seemed like it would be enough. It turned out it wasn't. And so the other thing too, Huss, on top of that is, and chalk this under maybe making some premature observations after 1 week, but I just don't know if this league's going to have a ton of parity. I don't know who the dogs in this league are. I don't think the Bombers are the big bad Bombers anymore. I think this is the year, and I wrote about this in my CFL rundown column, first one of the season, that I think this is the year that the Bombers take a step back. I mean, you have a ton of guys who are getting older. We were having this conversation for years. It just feels like this is the season. Adam Bighill's on the 6-game injured list. Let's see when he comes back. He's expecting to get into the lineup this week, but he also hasn't had a camp. Guys are getting older. Guys are, getting less, they're getting older. They're getting less quick. They're losing speed. They're not becoming better players. Now, the Bombers have done an okay job of filling in some of those spots, but this year it just looks like it's up for grabs. Who wants it? Someone's got to come out there and take it. And after week 1, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I'm with you. And you know what? That was a big, we did our CFL previews, talking to some people around the league, yourself included. And listen, the Bombers' credit, they have set the bar so high. I mean, as fans, we've been spoiled, and we understand that because of what preceded these last 4 years here in Winnipeg. But it is incredibly difficult in this salary cap system to keep your team together, but also Father Time is undefeated. And there will be a time where some players take a step back or don't continue to move forward as much as other teams. And I think that's a fair conversation to have about Winnipeg right now. Can they still beat anybody on a given night? I will say yes. I mean, it's not like there's a couple other teams that are just night and day ahead of everyone, but we also didn't see anywhere close to the best of the Blue Bombers in week 1. And I think it is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to continue to get better. And what's the most important thing is that you were set at the end of the year. And to that point, Jeff, these next few weeks, I mean, as much as I'm looking to see how the team executes and the guys that you're leaning on, like a Zach Caleros, maybe the most important thing will be the development of some of the younger, newer players of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because I don't think that this team can just rely on the same guys they've been relying on year after year after year right now, with, that element of, coming back to the mean, if you will, especially as players get a little bit older. And listen, they're going to have an opportunity. Some guys are going to have an opportunity to do that right away because of guys that have been hurt. Kenny Lawler, I don't know if you know the exact nature of the injury. We've heard it been reported as a fractured arm. He's on the 6th game. That leaves a huge hole in the offense. Mm-hmm. And I know Retta Cranby has a hip injury. He didn't practice as well. But as you mentioned, the good news for the Bombers is they do get Adam Bighill back. And I think having a week of practice with Alexander, with Bighill, will be good. I should do a bit of a mea culpa. I mean, I was a bit down after the game on Friday and said every aspect of the game just wasn't up to snuff. And listen, that was no defensive masterpiece. But I will sort of stick up for the defense a little bit, in the fact that the offense just was so anemic. They seem to be on the football field all the time. And if you give a team like Montreal that many opportunities, sooner or later, they will make you pay. But overall, I don't think it was a terrible defensive performance. Overall, with the team, though, it wasn't even close to where Mike O'Shea expects his team to be.
Oh, absolutely. And especially when you factor in that Winnipeg went out and spent all their pennies and gave all their raises to their offensive weapons, right? I mean, They let guys like Rasheed Bailey go that were cheaper and signed. Dalton Schoen's a significantly better receiver than Rasheed Bailey. That's also why he's making significantly more money. But you look at Rasheed Bailey and what he was able to do in week 1 with the Toronto Argonauts. Not only was he bringing his trademark blocking and physicality at the line, he also got his mitts on a touchdown. And so when you look at the offense and just, talk about execution, or in this case, lack thereof, yeah, it's a little bit concerning. It's a little troubling. Are we going to see many games like that from Zach Collaros where he's off target and on a number of different throws, including a couple in the end zone? Probably not. I'd imagine that, he looked pretty darn good in training camp. And so the conversation comes up, did he warrant reps in the preseason? I think he got a little bit of preseason last year. He didn't play any the year before, and then there wasn't any. So there's been years where he has played, and there's been years where he hasn't played. And if you look at the receipts, Zach Collaros did pretty good. It's probably his 2 MOP seasons. And if Brady Oliveira isn't edging him out with 2,000 all-purpose yards, he's probably in that conversation again last year. So, I think that's fine. You look at the defense. I agree with you. I think the defense, that was the big question marks. I still think there's going to be some major question marks on the defense, just because of the new faces. I do think, I think the biggest thing for the Bombers this year is a lack of depth. The guys in behind the guys, you look at some of those positions, and it's the guys in behind the guys that are getting the job now. How will those new guys in behind the guys now fare when they get called on, if there's an injury, if there's an issue? And I look at some of the positions here. You look at guys like Jamal Parker. He's probably not coming back this season. Cameron Lawson, probably not coming back this season. These are guys who are out long-term who were going to take over for, maybe starting positions, who are now out. And so guys fill in those positions. So it's a little bit of a trickle effect, but look at the defense too. And I do think, and the offense, to their credit, took ownership of this. Zach Collaros took ownership of it. Pat Neufeld, Stanley Bryant, they all put this on the offense and needing to be better. But, it's not like the defense was up against a juggernaut attack. This was Cody Fajardo, who, yes, I understand he was the Grey Cup MVP, had a terrific, game, or a terrific, last second drive there. But he only threw for 14 touchdowns last season. He threw for what, 2 or 3 against the Bombers here? That's a bit troubling. So, while the defense certainly looked better compared to an offense that looked horrendous, I still think there's some question marks. And let's go, while we're on the buffet, let's go to special teams, because this idea that they brought in a bunch of great returners that Mike O'Shea said, that's crap, man. Those guys are gone. Chris Smith is around, and maybe he's good, maybe he's not. I mean, there was an impressive 109-yard, punt return touchdown, but there's no guarantee that that's, going to lead into season-long success. And, there are
he's
a lot of
He's not even on the team right now.
He's not, but he will rehab, and if he can get past his rehab, I'm sure he'll get. I'm sure Myron Mitchell is pretty much rolling out the red carpet for him to return after what we saw in week 1. And again, I'm not trying to be harsh. This is a first game, first experience for this guy. But this is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They know how important it is to have a key kicker. They know how important it is to have a key returner. They know how important special teams are. So to go in this year again, kind of being oh yeah, we'll find somebody here. Yeah, okay, let's see. Because you couldn't find somebody when Janarian Grant went down last year. So how much confidence is it that you've had, after looking at some of these guys? I don't know if you would have much as a spectator. But yeah, it's again, this is all chalk this under premature. Bombers could come out this week, feed the Ottawa Redblacks their lunch, and we're talking next Monday about how the Bombers righted the ship and we're able to do it. I used to say it about the Jets all the time. You don't like the narrative, go out there and change it.
Yeah, well, wait a little bit. They'll have that opportunity to do it in Ottawa on Thursday. And then, and I haven't looked at the schedule. I'm not sure. I almost assume that BC is going to be on the bye this week just because they had the late game. They traveled across to Toronto. But that following Friday.
Hey, if it makes sense, Huss, probably not going to be exercised.
Oh, no, BC's at home this week because they've got 50 Cent. They got 50 Cent, of course. That's the big one on Saturday. Okay, so both teams will have a chance to get to 1-1. And then Friday, June 21st, BC here to take on the Bombers. And of course, BC lost yesterday. I mean, just looking at the other games quickly, takeaways. I didn't see much of the Friday game. I had a good chat with Nielsen today, who called it. Said that Hamilton, they had a bunch of drops that really killed them in that game.
Yeah.
I saw quite a bit of the Saskatchewan Edmonton game. I think both of those teams are looking more competitive than they were.
Edmonton's up to its old tricks, just handing the game over to the other team in whatever way possible.
Exactly. But Matt, I think I was most impressed with the Argos, and how they found themselves down 20-6 after giving up 20 unanswered, and then answering in a big way in the second half. And to do it with Dukes, in his first real legit start. I mean, I know we had that game in Winnipeg last year when they were benching Chad Kelly. You lose Mace, you lose a lot of key guys on the defense. You're bringing in your backup to start. To come back from a 14-point deficit and get a win, heck of a way to start the season for the Argos, who had a pretty miserable training camp on and off the field.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote in my rundown column at the start that, Chad Kelly, while, certainly losing the reigning MOP from your team is a shot, it wasn't the Chad Kelly show last year. If you looked at the stats, I mean, yes, he was the leader of a 16-2 team. He certainly had, impressive showings, but he wasn't in the top 3 in yards. I don't know if he was in the top 3 in touchdowns, whatever. I don't want to get those things wrong, but he wasn't leading the way, and he really was playing on the backs of an incredible defense. And what's the thing about Toronto, man, is that, look, they lost a lot of guys on that defensive side of the ball, including Corey Mace, their defensive coordinator, who now, of course, is the head coach in Saskatchewan. They lost a lot of guys, man, in the secondary, in that front line. They went out and bought guys. They bring in a guy like Jake Sorenza, who had 12 sacks last year, and they can identify, for all the ridiculous things that John Murphy can be attached to in this league, he is also a very good talent evaluator. That's why he's been able to get to survive what would probably kill the careers of most people in this league for sure. He's been able to survive those things and keep a job because he can evaluate talent. And that's the unfortunate bullshit truth, but it's the truth nonetheless. And so I said to people, you can, I wouldn't be looking at the Toronto Argonauts right now without Chad Kelly and thinking that they're done. That's a defense that's going to have a chip on their shoulder. And Cameron Dukes too. Yeah, he doesn't have a ton of experience. He was 1-1. But when they came to Winnipeg, and told everybody in their cat that they weren't dressing a star lineup. Remember the big controversy that the Bombers weren't going to see the best of the Toronto Argonauts because Chad Kelly was sitting, all these other guys were sitting later in the year.
It was a loss for the whole Canadian Football League. We've been waiting for that game the entire season.
Cameron Dukes came out and led his team on the field and almost beat the full-on Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who needed that victory. Yeah. So Cameron Dukes is, he's in his. He kind of reminds me a bit of Drew Brown. He's got that, he's got that ability to escape the pocket and throw on the run and do a little bit of audible stuff, and it worked for them. And to your point, Huss, I'm with you. I'm watching that game yesterday. I finally see, Vernon Adams connect Fulham on that long distance touchdown where there was obviously a missed coverage or whatever. And then to see them on, I don't know if it was just doing kickoff or shortly thereafter to scoop up a ball and turn it for a touchdown. I thought that was starting to write the obituary of them. So credit to everybody on the Toronto, roster who was playing that game. Certainly, credit to the coaching staff. Ryan Dinwiddie, has dealt with tough circumstances in a lot of instances, and maybe, and certainly knowing that Chad Kelly wasn't going to be part of the team for at least the first half of the season, it benefited the Argos to a certain degree to then move forward with Cameron Dukes and have him get the first team reps, to have, to bring in, a guy like Nick Arbuckle to be a backup plan, right? Like now these guys are getting meaningful reps. They're not getting this news on Monday of week 1 and all of a sudden have to switch their planning and strategizing. They were able to do that all camp. And so while it certainly wasn't like, I am a bit surprised that Toronto was able to do that, especially against a BC team that, again, many people are looking at as the favorites in the Grey Cup. I think those people that are looking at the Lions as favorites in the Grey Cup didn't really look at the tracker throughout the offseason, because they did lose a handful of guys and they do have some injuries. So there is going to be some growing pains there. Just as a side note too, what the hell is BC doing giving Vernon Adams the short yardage carries? Like, I just don't understand this. Guy's got an injured hand in week 1 now. Just to I don't even think it was on a short yardage play, but just to task him with that when you had Dakota Prue Cup, I don't know what Rick Campbell's doing out there with his quarterbacks, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Why do you have Dakota Prue Cup if you're not giving him the
They
short
don't.
yardage
They released him.
stuff?
They released him. He's no longer with them anymore. So they decided that they were going to hand the short yardage duties to their starting quarterback, and I'd argue the quarterback who has the most to prove this year. If Vernon Adams doesn't come out and announce himself this year as the MOP, because apparently if you look at some factions of this country, he's gotten a rough go, come out and get it done. Come out and lead your team to victory. And that's the pressure that's placed on all quarterbacks. I'm not just putting this on Vernon Adams, but I'm waiting for Vernon Adams to come out and really make a statement this season for all the opportunity that he's had, and to lose against the Toronto Argonauts in the fashion that they did, it's kind of wah-wah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I remember it was probably 3 or 4 years ago where Patrick Mahomes took a sneak on short yardage, hurt his knee. He's never had another sneak since then. I mean, there's been a couple plays in Super Bowls where they've done options and he's run the football, but they don't have him getting in the pile. And I would suggest that would probably be a smart way to go about things for the BC Lions. Listen, we're going to have much more CFL talk on our first edition of, we're going to call it CFL 110, I think, coming up on Wednesday. So you won't have to wait until Mondays every week to dive into all the big stories around the Canadian Football League. So stay tuned for more information on that and look forward to it on Wednesday. Hey, before we go, hearing the reports this weekend that it looks like Brendan Dillon is going to be going to unrestricted free agency. We haven't heard a lot with Dylan DeMello. The cap is going up. There is, I think, a lot of intrigue that maybe some of these guys might see some bigger dollars or greener pastures elsewhere. How do you see this going forward, Jeff? I mean, I for a long time thought that one of those two guys would be back. Could the Jets basically be looking to revamp their entire defense? I pointed this out earlier today, but there are 4 defensemen signed for next year right now. Certainly you'd think that Ville Heinola will be part of that mix, potentially Elias Salmonson coming over. But as of right now, from last year's team, Josh Morrissey, Dylan Sandberg, and then the one final year of the contracts for Neil Pionka and Nate Schmidt. How different might this blue line look next season?
Massive potential for it to get an overhaul, and would that be the worst thing? I mean, you look at guys like Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon. Okay, Dylan DeMello plays incredibly well beside Josh Morrissey. Is that worth paying him excess of $4 million a season, $5 million a season? Maybe. There was a once upon a time where it was Dustin Byfuglien who was flanking the right side of the top defensive pairing, and it was his responsibility to bring on the next guy, to bring on a Josh Morrissey. Josh Morrissey got an opportunity with him, and that's how he grew. So if Josh Morrissey is going to get all these accolades for being one of the top defensemen in the league, get these votes for Norris trophies and whatever, is he not in a position now to bring along somebody who might be younger and ready to make that jump, who isn't, a veteran defenseman? Possibly. Brendan Dillon brings muscle. This team, this defense needs to get bigger and more physical. If there was anything that we noticed in the playoffs, or we notice every year in the playoffs, it's that you need physical defensemen. I'm not saying everyone needs to be 7 feet tall, nor am I saying go, copy and paste a bunch of Logan Stanleys, but you need that tenacity and that physicality that a guy like Brendan Dillon brings. But again, are you ready to commit to a guy who is getting older, who is coming off a great contract year? Do you want to pay him now? Like how many more years is Brendan Dillon going to be what you saw last year? Maybe one more year, possibly, if that. Maybe a couple, doubtful. So you got to make some pretty tough decisions. And I was also in the camp that suggested that even if you do bring back Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello and say they're your second and third D-men, you need better second and third D-men. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think this is an opportunity for the Jets to it certainly looks like an opportunity for them to reevaluate their defense and how it looks and who they want, and go find some people, right? Go out there and identify some guys and bring some people in free agency, or look at what you have in the cupboards and try your best, essentially. But if you don't bring back Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon, I don't know. I'm not going to be you can count me in the camp that won't be overly disappointed, even though if you don't bring both of them back, you better find somebody to replace them that's not currently in the building.
No, I mean, it's a good point. And hey, I mean, a couple of people mentioned to me, you're overhauling a defense that was number one in the league. Listen, parts of it, but I think if people are looking at overhauling it, DeMello and Dillon, probably not where you're starting. It just happens that they're the contracts that are up. You've got a couple other guys that you might want to overhaul that are still on the books that are probably very difficult to get rid of. And I did see Doug Phil ask, are Heinola and Salmonson ready for full-time NHL duties? Well, listen, if Vili's not now, I mean, this is going to be his opportunity. He's not waiver exempt. I would imagine that he will be given every opportunity to be a regular for the blue line. And I think they hope that Elias Salmonson is, but he hasn't really played in North America. Had a great year. He's had 2 awesome years of development, played on a championship team in the Swedish league. So the hope is that he would be, but can you rely on that right now and pencil him in? I'm not sure. I mean, I think you got to show something come the preseason and early opportunities. So
I think you also need to identify. Sorry, I just need to say one thing. I also think you need to identify. I think heading into last year, even heading into the playoffs this year, you viewed this as a 2-year window of winning the Stanley Cup. If you still feel that way, then you need to go out and get some dogs. But I also think you need to reevaluate on whether or not you think that you're a team that can win the Stanley Cup. I mean, you were a team that got your lunch handed to you by the Colorado Avalanche. You then got their lunch handed to them by the Dallas Stars, who then got their lunch handed to them by the Edmonton Oilers. So you can't really use this theory that the team that you lost to in the first round was some kind of Stanley Cup juggernaut. It was a team that turned a switch and made light work of you. So I think that's part of the process too, to evaluate honestly where you're at as a team, and it bringing back the same players and redoing the blue line the same way you did the year before. Well, had some team success. That's a team award, the Jennings Award, by the way, and it includes the play of your goaltender between the pipes. I think you need to really take a hard look at where you're at with the blue line and decide and chart a path forward on how you're going to be competitive, because you're not a building team. You're not a team that's, you're retooling, if that. So you need to have a plan in place here. And I imagine as we inch closer to free agency here, and certainly over the draft, that's top of mind for the Winnipeg Jets is figuring out the answers on the blue line enough that they can get past the first round of the playoffs next season.
Yeah, no doubt. And hey, listen, there's some really good teams that go out in the first round every year. I mean, it is uber competitive, and the Jets will say, and I subscribe to this, they were a really good team last year, did a lot of really good things. They for whatever reason, they did not bring their best in the playoffs, and Colorado really stepped it up and was on another level than them for 5 games. But I think that they can look back at 82 and say they did enough good things that you're certainly not looking to do anything like blow it up, but there's some key areas that you need to get better at, and that's going to be on the shoulders of the general manager over the course of these next few weeks via trade, and then, of course, come July 1 for free agency. Hammer, have a safe trip out to Ottawa on tomorrow, and we'll look forward to some additional CFL talk here on the WST channel when we get going on Wednesday. Have a great one, a safe trip, and we'll talk to you then.
Very much looking forward to, my friend. We'll see you then.
You got it. And again, a big thanks to our pal Pat Kanuga and Garage Living. You can find out at garageliving.ca. We're going to have them on board for the regular show, but also helping us out with CFL 110, which is going to get going later on this week. Do not miss it here on the WST feed. All right, we are going to welcome in Moe Khan here in just a minute. I got to give a shout out to our friends at Hoagie Boys. Gang, if you have not tried the incredible sandwiches at Hoagie Boys, might I suggest you do it? And there probably has never been a better testimonial for a sandwich shop than when Patty Neufeld of the Bomber O-line came on last week. And as I was mentioning Hoagie Boys, I saw his eyes open up, and then he mentioned how he and the fellas love to get down to the location on South Osborne and crush some of the best sandwiches around. Open 7 days a week now from 11:30 a.m. to 7. All the hit subs that they put together, including the Italian Standard, the Adam Sanduzel, Dr. Pepperoni, the Evil Morty, Bingo Bronson, everything made fresh in-house. They do some great catering as well, especially now that we get into football season. Might be smart to grab a few of those for your tailgate if you don't want to make them yourself. But in the meantime, pop down, tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you, and enjoy the incredible stuff the Cosmos boys have going at Hoagie Boys. And of course, you can also get the grub of Cosmos at the Beer Can and at Next Door down at 116 Sherbrooke. Shout out to the Gold Eyes. Big series win on the weekend. They are back to 500 after that tough start in Cleburne. The team's looking great, and they're getting it together just in time for our big event next Tuesday. We're down to the last couple tickets. If you have not got one, we could already be sold out now by all I know is if someone's bought seats in the last few hours. Get over to winnipegsportstalk.com while supplies last. Grab your tickets on the Gold Eyes link. There's also a link in the description of this. Sorry, we're at 5 tickets left. So if you want to get one of the final 5 tickets to join us for our first WST patio party at the Gold Eyes game next Tuesday, June 18th, do it now. Just signed off. We'll get the koozies for everyone that'll be included with the tickets. And, of course, that area that we're going to be at, brand new for this season along the first base line, 2 new patios with bar-style tables and seats for everybody. Cannot wait to see you all there, and cannot wait to see the Gold Eyes when they're back this weekend, as well as the following week when we'll be doing our WST patio party. So that's right now. Link in the description or link at winnipegsportstalk.com. Get them before they are gone. It's Monday. That means we've got some ASD picks coming up a little later on. Before we go to Moe Khan, let me fire off the WST Breezy Bend golf report for the weekend. And guess what? Scotty Scheffler won again. Heck of a tournament, though. Beating Colin Morikawa by 1 at Jack Nicklaus hosted the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village. It is U.S. Open week. We'll have to get Feinberg on over the next couple days to chop it up and get his thoughts on the upcoming U.S. Open at Pinehurst. But in the meantime, it's all Scotty Scheffler. He's opened up as a plus 350 favorite for this event, which is prime Tiger numbers. And actually, he became the only golfer ever other than Tiger to win the Masters, the Players, and the Memorial all in the same year. What a year it's been for Scotty, and that's not even including getting arrested at the PGA. Of course, Breezy Bend, great sponsors of ours. If you're thinking about one of Winnipeg's top private courses is a long-term golfing home for you and your family, get in touch with our pal Corey Johnson at the clubhouse, or you can go online and find out more at breezybend.ca. All right, coming up now, a trip to Montreal. There was the F1 on the weekend. We've got some Canada soccer news to talk about, and a lot of CFL after the Alouettes came in and put one on the Bombers. Always love having Mo on the program. Let's bring him in now on WST. How are you, buddy? Did you survive F1 weekend, the biggest weekend in a town that has a few big weekends over the course of the year?
So, Andrew, we always say, journalism doesn't, reveal their private lives and stuff. They keep it straight. We're good old people out here.
Pull back the curtain.
Yeah, I'll pull it back. I'll be transparent, man. I was out till 5 a.m. Friday night to Saturday. That was an epic night. That was fun. It was a fun night. Saturday, I had a wedding. Okay, and I got invited to the Maxim party, and that was the hot ticket in town Saturday night. And people were found out, hey, you got tickets for Maxim? I go, I didn't get tickets. I got invited to it. We'll see if I go. I didn't go to that one. They ran out of gas like at 2:00 in the morning. I said, I'm not going downtown the construction hell to find parking for quick nightcaps. Friday was epic, and Saturday could have been epic, but I chose the safety route than going with the epic route.
Hey, let me just ask you about listen, this is a world-class event. We know about the money, the beautiful people that come along with F1. Like, just from a Montreal standpoint, how big is this weekend, and how different is it from the other 51 a year?
It's the biggest financial gain for downtown merchants for the year. It's their make or break, pretty much. And I know you guys are out in Winnipeg and aren't in the Montreal politics, which has been a never-ending river of diarrhea that we have in the city of Montreal, locally and provincially. But the current mayor, Valerie Plante, who is much maligned and not well liked because she's pulling the green card in terms of bikes and all that, which is cool. I'm all right with that. But this is the biggest weekend here. You cannot handcuff the downtown core by construction zone hell, which is going on right now, and the fact that some terraces were shut down because apparently they didn't meet fire code standards, which they approved for licenses to have that. And, even during the Sky Sports broadcasting team, at the end, the lead commentator said, I felt for the fans who were in Montreal, didn't have an easy passage for events and getting to the racetrack and leaving the racetrack. So it was not the most A-plus effort. And I know the weather didn't help in Montreal with the rain on and off all weekend long, Andrew. But the reality was the city of Montreal pretty much put themselves in a trunk underneath the St. Lawrence River and couldn't get out with a magical act here. And this was a complete mess from that perspective. But I'm always pulling for the businesses here because it really makes or breaks their season. And if they come up short, I always fear that they might lose their storefront because they didn't make enough money from this one weekend alone.
Well, listen, it would not be the first time that bureaucracy got in the way of a well-planned and successful event. I'll say that. And, these events are huge, and there's a lot of variables that go in. But when some of them are self-inflicted, it doesn't go well. And doesn't go over well, certainly with the populace.
No.
Mo, as far as the actual, are you a big F1 guy? Do you follow it quite a bit? I always say I understand why it's the most popular form of auto racing in the world. The cars are incredible.
Yeah.
They do a great job marketing the personalities. The only thing that I find that misses the mark a little bit for me is if you're not knowing every single bit of information on all the cars. As far as who's winning, a lot of times, as they say in the lock shop, let's just bet Max Verstappen and let me know what happens on Monday. Often he just goes and wins, and the guy just dominates the sport right now.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'll follow it, right? But again, with the early start times when they're in Japan and China and Saudi Arabia, whatever it is, it's tough, right? It's like 4 in the morning and we're sleeping at that time, or getting home at 5 a.m. like I was on Friday. But the Montreal race always brings intrigue because given how the weather was on the Friday, Saturday into Sunday, where it was wet and dry and all that stuff, it really elevated the profile because you saw, right, Verstappen didn't have a good start to the race, and then you saw Russell and everyone else come and play here, and it went down to the final 5 laps, essentially what it was. But at the end of the day, though, when it was all said and done for this race, it sets up well for Europe because now they're going to the European part of their course season now. And that's where I think we'll see if Max will hold on. I think he will because, again, he's won 6 of the 9 so far. But had he lost this race on Sunday and with the Ferraris not doing what they normally have done of late here, Andrew, it's really given Max the hammer to really win this tour and be champion once again.
Moe Khan's with us from Montreal. I don't normally talk about F1, but it gave me a few minutes to avoid talking about the Alouettes Bombers game here on Thursday night. What was your takeaway? Listen, I got to give credit where credit is due. Neither of the teams looked particularly good out of the gate, but Montreal seemed to hit their stride, a lot quicker than we're still waiting for the Bomber offense to hit their stride. But I thought it was crazy that the Bombers were as big of favorites as they were, and we talked about it going into the season, into the week. I still expected the Bombers to be better and probably win that football game, but this was all Alouettes. And listen, there's a lot of disappointment here on what the Bombers did not do, and I think we'd all agree that was far from their best. But what did you take away from the defending champs and going into Winnipeg and getting that season opening win the way they did?
Yeah, I thought first of all, you're right. Both teams look really slow burn out of the gates. Like, it wasn't good football. And I know the CFL likes to have their Grey Cup rematch week 1, which is kind of a bit asinine because I always find they're not at their best. If the Grey Cup rematch is maybe week 4, week 5, week 6, I think we see better football from both teams. But to see Montreal to do what they did in Winnipeg, where their defense played flawless or near flawless, didn't have to get much from Fajardo. And look, Philpott and Fajardo had a great rapport all throughout the ball game here. Look, I've said it before. I said it on Twitter last week. The recipe for the Montreal West to be successful this year will be their defense creating havoc and gain 20 points minimum from their offense. If they achieve those 2 feats, they'll be tough to beat. And I just thought from Winnipeg's perspective, they looked old, slow. But that's not their game, though, Andrew, right? They don't care about week 1. They're building up towards Grey Cup. And remember, last year they got whacked by BC, and people thought it's over for the Bombers. It's about the Lions, and look what happened, right? It's Bombers that went to the Grey Cup in the end. I think Winnipeg will be fine. But I just think that, the Kane Lawler injury will hurt, and who steps up into his production value, what he brings on the field, will be immense. And also, they have to get the O-line checked because, quite frankly, I know they had some change with the O-line here. That has been the key and why Winnipeg's been great the last 4 or 5 years has been the continuity and the health of that front 5. If they don't have those 2 going in their favor, Andrew, it makes it closer with BC and whoever might be third place, Sask, Calgary, Edmonton coming out of that division in that race for first. But I still think Winnipeg is the favorites to win that division, and they'll be okay moving towards week 2 and beyond.
Well, it's funny. Bombers and BC both 0-1 after season opening losses. Now, the Bombers were at home. BC had to travel all the way across the country to Toronto. I thought that actually might help them, the fact that they were doing that trip right off the bat as opposed to in the middle of the season. And I know there's no Chad Kelly, but a very impressive win for the Argos coming back the way they did against BC last night. And, once again, week 1, we're 1 week in, but it seems like Montreal and Toronto are the teams to beat. We haven't seen Ottawa yet, I guess.
No, Ottawa's not going to be there.
Yeah, well, the Bombers are going in there on Thursday night, so they certainly hope that they won't be in the conversation right after they play one game. But I have to say, impressed with Chad Dukes and impressed with the way that they came back from that pretty big deficit in the first half to win the way they did.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at that game, Toronto gets out to a 6-0 lead, which would have been 7, right? And then BC scores 20 unanswered. And that fumble return for a touchdown, I think, kind of changed it in favor for Toronto. That woke them up, in fact. I thought that was when the game turned for the Argos. And I felt bad for Vernon Adams Jr. because same thing. Like, his O-line did not give him any protection. Like, he got walloped. I was fearful that he may not be upright by the time 50 Cent arrives on stage next weekend against Calgary. And if BC is going to be the team to be in that conversation, to be in for Grey Cup, and remember, Amar Doman went all in, right, with what he's done in the lead up to this year for November. You bring Christian Covington back, who's been in the NFL for 8-9 years and was not available, I think, for a portion of the football game yesterday. The key for the BC Lions, I believe, will be the receiving core. They had a whole transition now with who's left, who's come in, and who's gone from this roster. And for VA to be that guy for this team to be successful, same thing as for Winnipeg, right? That O-line has to play better than what they didn't do. And more importantly, though, for this franchise moving forward here, Andrew, the expectation levels, they kind of have to temper that a little bit here and make themselves much more focused than where they were week 1, because they should have won that game in Toronto and were outclassed in that second half.
Yeah, it was it was a great game to finish up the weekend. I mean, I thought the games in the middle, I didn't see a lot of the Friday game. Watched a lot of Saskatchewan, Edmonton, and both of those teams had their moments. Both of the teams looked like they've got a lot of work to do. And I think you could say that for most of the league, frankly, just based on how short the preseason is, how little many of the starters play. Although maybe not quite as little as here in Winnipeg, which is a big topic coming out of that performance against the Alouettes. But a heck of a way to start the season. And, credit to Cody Fajardo, Jason Moss, and the Alouettes for picking up where they left off in Hamilton, getting a big win against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I see the Owls in Edmonton coming up this weekend. And, of course, the Bombers playing a Thursday night game against the Ottawa Red Blacks.
By the way, Andrew, remember last year, Ottawa beat Winnipeg in Ottawa last year.
Yeah, that was the Crumback.
Yeah, that was the So I'm not saying they're going to do it again, I think Ottawa has more problems, a lot more pressure on their roster and staff to win this year. And if they don't do it now, I mean, look, it's been apathetic with the fan base in Ottawa, and they deserve so much better than what they've seen on the football for the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, no, and listen, I got a soft spot for Bobby Dice, and listen, former Bomber Drew Brown is going to be there. I might play into the Bombers' hands for game number 1. I think they've gone against him in practice quite a bit, but again, it's all about what happens when they blow the whistle, and we see what happens in 60 minutes. I would be shocked if the Bombers weren't significantly better than they were last week, but maybe it takes a bit of time. Good news, though, for the Bombers. They are getting Adam Bighill back, although no Kenny Lawler and Brady Oliveira at this point, at least in the week, a question mark. Moe Khan's with us. Mo, I always love having you on the program because we can hit a whole bunch of different sports. We're going to be talking a lot of soccer over the next little while because Canada is going to Copa America for the first time. And the first game is on June 20th, taking on Argentina. We've got a new manager, a new head coach for the national team. They just played 2 friendlies, hung in there for a half against the Dutch, and then had that fall apart in about 20 minutes. And then I think to most people's eyes, very surprisingly, hung in there in a 0-0 draw with France yesterday. Tell us about the new manager and what we can take away, if anything, from these 2 friendlies leading into Copa.
So for those who don't know, Jesse Marsh initially coached the Montreal Impact in their first season, got sacked after year 1. Went on a European voyage where he was under the Red Bull format, Red Bull Leipzig, and in the one in Switzerland, I think it is, or Austria, whichever one it was. He managed Erling Haaland, who's now at Manchester City, and others who've grown up and now have moved on to bigger and better clubs. He's sort of the outside-the-box tactician, right? He's very progressive in his thinking, analytic in his whole process here. And do I think it's the right move for Team Canada? We'll see, because, look, the CSA is banking on Jesse Marsh to build up for 2026. Because you were there, you saw in Qatar what happened, Andrew, right? They didn't have any presence in the spine of their formation, the midfield. And that's going to be key for Jesse and for Mauro Biello and his backroom staff. Can they find the right formation? Can they find the right pieces in place in the next 2 years that can control the midfield? Because in European football and soccer, in our terms, if you can't control the middle of the park, you're not going to any matchup. And the case that it was against the Netherlands and in France, yeah, they were competitive for one half against the Dutch, but the Dutch came on, put on the big guns, and did what they had to do. Now, we were talking off air about France. Look, the French aren't that type of team that's going to turn it on like that. They like to build up in tournaments. And now, in the lead up for the European Cup, this probably wakes them up saying, look, we can't take anyone for granted here. And they have a now team that can win the Euro and probably be a World Cup contender in 2026 in North America. I think for Canada, it's a great building block for them. I think you can take hope going towards the Copa that, hey, we can be competitive against South American nations. But the reality is, I'm not looking at the Copa as being the measure stick for this team. It's what they do in the lead up now, the next 2 years towards World Cup. Who they face, how they build up the character, how they build up the foundation pieces, and making sure that these guys are all bought in. Because I felt like with John Herdman towards the end of his time, you saw what happened last year at the League of Nations, right? It felt like the team kind of disconnected with them and didn't have the same rapport, the same kumbaya in the lead up to the World Cup and after that. So I think for Jesse Marsh, who's very good as a player-manager perspective here, if he gets everyone buying in and he gets these guys looking at 2026 being the ultimate goal of getting out of group stage, then I think it's a successful run for Canada. But this is a big 2 years now for CSA and for Jesse to get this right, because if they don't do it now, Andrew, I don't know what to expect beyond 2026 for this program moving forward.
Well, they'll certainly be in the spotlight a lot more than they normally will be. I believe TSN has all the games. DZ's doing a great job kind of teeing everything up. And Friday, I believe it's Friday, the 20th, is Canada-Argentina.
That's right.
I assume that's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. And then I know they play Peru and Kansas City the following weekend. Expectations presumably for Canada are quite low for this tournament, Mo, or well, as I mentioned to you off air, if the USA can beat Pakistan in cricket, why not Canada versus Argentina in soccer? It sounds like that's about the level of that upset, but give us your thoughts on it.
But here's the thing, though, the Pakistan Cricket Federation is in complete shambles before they lost the USA last week, okay? Canada, CSA, they're trying to get out of this whole dark abyss that they went through off the field, right, with what happened, right? But if they're gonna pull off the upset against Argentina and Messi, they got to come out there and be brave. And when I'm saying be brave is that they cannot allow Argentina to control the possession and the narrative of this matchup next week, whenever they play in 2 weeks. If they get the first goal counted, if they get that first goal, it gives them a bit of hope here. But again, they got to be structured around the middle of the park here. Can they win the midfield battle with McAllister and all those Argentine players who are top tier worldwide here? If they can't win the midfield battle with Fernandez and McAllister in particular, I'm not saying it's going to be a rump here, but this could be a game where it could get out of hand and they could be down 2-3-0 in the first 45 minutes of play here. So they got to be brave and be confident in their system. And again, the timing of Jesse coming in now, it's tough because he hasn't had much time, Andrew, to build up what he wants to have, being the great football that he wants to play at some point here. So this might be a rough go initially, but I think they'll be competitive enough. Not sure to get a group stage, but they could definitely put some goals in at some points.
Hey, Mo, I've got to quickly ask you about the CEBL while you're here. And like some big news today from the Sea Bears. 2023 CEBL scoring champion Justin Wright Foreman, who finished second to Teddy Buckets in the MVP, is now a Sea Bear. The team's had a pretty good start so far. How big of a signing? I mean, you've been in tune. You've been calling games in this league for the last number of years. What was your reaction when you heard, wait a second, the Sea Bears just got him?
The rich get richer, right? I mean, and no, but the Sea Bears, they're all in. Like, you go back to game number 1 against Scarborough. I know Scarborough's missing guys that I know are with him as we speak, but you saw Winnipeg and Coach Taylor's team that they have the recipe to win it. And you bring in a guy like Wright Foreman who can score points off the ball and be effective both ends of the court. This is a great signing for Winnipeg. And once he gets comfortable, and I know, and again, there's 2 spots going from the West to the championship weekend in Montreal in mid-August. They don't need him to be dynamo over here in late June or mid-June that we're in. They want him to peak in July where, A, they secure home court, and B, to get one of the 2 spots and have him peak at the right time with Teddy by August 10th, August 12th. This is great for the team. I think it's going to help with Mullins there as well and the supporting cast being what it is. But the one thing, though, that I will say is that in a format like this, the CEBL, Andrew, one injury can derail the season. And you don't want to have a plethora of injuries that can hurt your team here. So they got to keep him focused and let him slowly immerse himself into this rotation. And once he does, then I think Winnipeg, you look at Edmonton, I think those are the 2 favorites coming out of the West as we speak at the midpoint of the season nearly.
Well, I listen, we've had a great time. There's been a couple games here in Winnipeg. The crowds continue to be great. It's great to see what's happening actually around the league with crowds. And I know Montreal's one of the 3, I guess, league-owned teams. But, I mean, out east, Mo, are you seeing the sort of momentum that the league seemingly has here on the prairies and out west?
Yeah, no, Montreal's a good, it's been steady, right? It's not Winnipeg numbers of crowds, right? And I applaud Winnipeg and the fan base there that show up. That's great for the sport of basketball. But I just think that in this town of Montreal, they love winners. And my biggest fear is that, given that Montreal still has that love affair with the Alliance and all that given that they're hosting the big weekend in August, that they got to put some wins together, right? Get the ball rolling here because they've had 3 losses of their 4 or 5 that they suffered. They've held the lead at halftime by 10 plus points, and they're 0-3 in those games. It could flip on a script here that they could easily be 3-2, 4-1 at the point that they're at, but they're not. And I think now they got to kind of get things down because they got Ottawa on Tuesday, they got Niagara on Thursday, and those are 2 tough teams. Lost to Ottawa at home last week. You got to beat Ottawa. And then Niagara's a big one. And I think in this whole playoff picture now, Niagara probably might be the favorites to win the CEBL at this point in the year of what they've built up under Coach Rasso. And if you can't send them a warning shot now, then people are going to say, well, you know what? They'll be one and done in the playoffs, and it'll be a Niagara versus whoever comes out of the West once we get to August 12th of the final Sunday.
Mo, always love having you on the program, a little round the world. We will definitely connect in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to Copa, keep following the CEBL, and it'll be a minute before the Bombers and Alouettes play again, but we'll definitely talk some CFL with you as well. Thanks so much for jumping on. We always love having you on WST.
Always, my friend. And just remember, though, right? I mean, the Montreal Alouettes are Grey Cup champions. Doesn't mean anything this year. It's a new page, new look, new chapter, new everything for everyone this
I
season.
want to know.
For now.
I want to know. I don't think that we haven't been remembering the Montreal Alouettes. The fact that there was the opening game between the Bombers and Montreal, it got mentioned quite a bit, Mo. And then, as I say, it was nice to get it all out on Friday, watch the games on the weekend, but a little bit revisiting it. It's all on to Ottawa for week 2 to coin a little Bill Belichick and Mike O'Shea. What can you do about it? But we'll see you again. Hey, have a great one, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Be good.
All right, good stuff with Mo. We're actually going to bring the Slapman in to find out more about this Justin Wright foreman, who's going to come in and hopefully help the Sea Bears get back to their winning ways. Before we do that, let me get to a Why Not question of the day for today, gang. Outside of the Bombers and Alouettes game, well, feel free to put Montreal as your answer. I don't think the Bombers will be the answer to this question for anybody. Which CFL team impressed you the most in week 1? Was it the Riders getting their big win? Was it the Argos? I think that's kind of maybe where I would go. Calgary, who not a lot of people were thinking about, getting a big win at home against Toronto. Or maybe it was the Montreal Alouettes being able to come into a very difficult place to win and get it. Let us know. Why Not question of the day in chat for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGilvery. Should mention to you folks that Royal Sports is busy right now. If you're looking for Bomber gear, getting in time for the upcoming home game against BC, Royals got it covered for you, along with some Stanley Cup merchandise and the best from the NHL, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, international soccer, and of course, just stocked right now to make the most of your summer with softball, baseball, tennis, golf, some golf equipment, some nice golf shirts there for sure, running, and of course, a huge selection of bikes as well. Don't forget, more tent sales coming up. Keep an eye on that. Your best way to follow that is just give them a follow on Insta at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and information. It's all waiting for you at Manitoba's #1 sports superstore, Royal Sports, at 750 Pembina Highway. And hey, tonight we're right back at it, coming out of the weekend with Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. You know where the place to be for Stanley Cup playoff hockey. Your local Boston Pizza, of course. Get together with your gang. Enjoy the BP playoff menu featuring wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, and the jalapeno popper dip. And hey, if you are staying at home tonight, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza as well by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we'll get to the Coolbet Lines in a minute and and our horse picks as well. But big news today from the Sea Bears, signing 2023 CEBL scoring champion Justin Wright foreman. And Joey Slattery joins us now. And Slats, this is great news for the Sea Bears, and it changes the narrative from an absolute faceplant yesterday in Calgary by the squad, and kind of a rough week at 1-2 away from Canada Life Center.
Yeah, it's I guess a good time to have that kind of a signing. It kind of pulls a veil over yesterday's performance. Tough loss in Calgary. It wasn't pretty from start. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was at halftime. It was a tie game, but Calgary pulled away. They, outplayed Winnipeg in the paint. They were hot from 3, and I think they were happy to leave Calgary as soon as possible after that game. But yeah, this is a huge signing. I mean, Teddy Allen is the reigning MVP. There was one guy who gave him a race last year for that, and it was Justin Wright Foreman. In fact, Justin Wright Foreman led the entire league in points per game, which is hard to believe because Teddy was averaging over 27 points a game. This guy was just shy of 30 points a game. So you take last year's scoring volume and you put them together in one backcourt, that's close to 60 points per game that are combining here for the Sea Bears, which obviously puts them at the forefront in terms of best backcourt in the league, you'd have to think, but that's on paper, right? I mean, he gets here today, I believe. He'll be officially introduced to the team tomorrow, and it'll be interesting to see if he's able to play on Thursday against Vancouver in Vancouver and what that lineup's going to look like with him in there now, because the 3 American rule on the court, you're likely going to have Teddy starting along with Justin Wright Foreman and Byron Mullins. And then it gets a little bit tricky making sure that you have enough Canadians on there as well and looking at all the looks you have. So it'll be interesting to see how Mike Taylor approaches next game with a new star in the lineup. Another star.
Do we know if there's is there a corresponding move? Knowing that there's a cap and how everything works in the CEBL, or learning how everything works in the CEBL, just wondering how they even got this done in the first place, considering the guys that they already added to the team. But is there another shoe to drop by signing Wright Foreman?
Yeah, so it appears already on the website they've taken Darius Days off of the site. From my understanding, he's been released. So he was gone for the last couple of games. He was not in the lineup, which is why you've seen, I think some struggles there as well. He was a really good player, a G League star, and he had some NBA workouts, which is why he left the team. So it appears as though that is going to be the other shoe to drop to make room for Justin Wright Foreman. But like I said, it's a huge addition. I mean, anytime you're putting a 30-point per game player on your roster, you're never going to say no to that. But it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because right now it appears that, defensively they've struggled, particularly in the transition, and they've been beaten up a little bit up front. I mean, Chad Posthumous has been playing very efficiently, but he's not playing a ton of minutes. Shane Osiande has been playing all right, but he doesn't pop on the score sheet. So, it's really going to be up to, Byron Mullins now is the head of the front court, if you will, to kind of carry the reins. He's been getting better as the season's been going on, but this is all going to be obviously focused on these, or the scoring rather is going to be focused on the guards here, because you throw in Jared Ogunbemi Jackson, who's been the second leading scorer for the Sea Bears and really stepped up in the absence of Teddy, particularly in that game against Niagara where Teddy was ejected after getting 2 technicals by midway through the second quarter. Jared is really picked up in the scoring, but the nice thing about it though is that last game you noticed it, right? Calgary just narrowed in on Teddy. Teddy couldn't get free. He still had about 15 points, which is light for Teddy Allen, but he wasn't getting the shots off. He had a ton of turnovers, I think 6 turnovers on the game. So now what this allows with Justin Wright Foreman, in theory, is that now you can't clamp down on Teddy because you have 2 elite scorers at the same time. So you can't dedicate, all of your resources towards one and settling for anybody else getting the shot. Now you really have to look at defensively how you're going to set this up when you have 2 sharpshooters and some complementary pieces like a Byron Mullins who can shoot the 3 as well as he can from mid-range and is a huge presence when it comes to rim protection. So that might actually help, especially when you get a guard like Justin Wright Foreman. He's fast. So you talk about the blocking ability and then being able to go the other way in transition. This will be a very exciting team to watch, but of course there's the narrative, right? There's only one ball to share, and you're adding yet another star, a ball dominant star to this team. So I'm not saying this is a bad signing. It is a great signing, but I am curious to see how they're going to be able to spread the ball around, make everybody happy, and keep everybody efficient and effective.
I was smiling just simply because I have someone in my inbox claiming that the Sea Bears are the Golden State Warriors of the CEBL.
They're kind of a super team now, yeah.
Adding another star player. Listen, the job is now to go out and execute. Fill us in on the week coming up for the Sea Bears. One more on the road and then coming back home to the friendly confines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're looking forward to coming home. But as you said, 1 and 2 on this road trip. This is the longest road trip of the year. It ends in Vancouver. Vancouver's motto all year has been get nasty, and they've been doing just that. They lead the West right now. They're 5-1 on the season. They're in first place, followed closely by Edmonton, who is 4-1. So now you look at it, they end their road trip in Vancouver, which is a tall task going up against Vancouver, who's got Nick Ward, who's one of the best forwards in the league, and then Taze Moore, who's probably been the most electrifying guy in the league this year, entertaining to watch in terms of the highlight reel dunks he's been putting on out there for Vancouver. But last game, Calgary is in last place, right? They put up 110 points, doesn't look good, but that's a team who was playing like their season is on the line early. Well, at 3-3, it sounds weird to say, but you're starting to feel a little bit of urgency if you're Winnipeg, and you might be a little comfortable in Vancouver. So the big thing there is going to be to exploit that, get off to a hot start, and then, you get a win in Vancouver against the top team in the league. That's a huge momentum swing coming back into Winnipeg, where you're going to meet Edmonton, who's had no problems winning in this arena. If you recall last year, they They won the last game of the season in Winnipeg, which took away the bye to the conference quarterfinals for Winnipeg. And then they came back here 6 days later and beat them again to eliminate them from the playoffs in that play-in game. So maybe a little bit of animosity there. I know that feels more like the rivalry than it does with Sask after last year. But yeah, it's going to also be some time there to get Justin Wright Foreman settled into that offense. And like I say, the hard part about this, there's no training camp. He's coming in on game, 6 or 7? And we're already a quarter way through the season, and he's going up against 2 top teams. So he's going to get tested early. David Mwencat made his debut over this road trip. He's looked like he's settled in just nicely. They can get the same thing out of Justin Wright Foreman. This ship will likely turn around in a hurry. But like I said, this is very good on paper. Looks like a super team. This is the team that everybody's going to put a target on, even though they're not in first place right now. So everybody brings their best game to Winnipeg. So that home court advantage, it's there. But I think it brings out the best of other teams. Now they've got to put this superstar roster together, get them to play cohesively. And if they can do that, this is going to be a dangerous team. And I think it's safe to put some title expectations there.
Oh, we'll certainly talk some more Sea Bears later on this week, heading into the weekend. We'll see if Justin Wright Foreman wants to jump onto the show. But in the meantime, nobody covers the Sea Bears better than you, both during your work at the games, but afterwards. Fill people in on target score and where new Sea Bears fans can get more of your content to find out more about the latest with our CEBL squad.
Yeah, so keep up to date on Instagram at Joey Slattery TV. I'm doing reports on there. I'll flip in on the Instagram Live every now and again, give updates and things like that. Of course, there's the Target Score Weekly podcast, which is on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. We actually had the Tracksuit Brothers on this week, and they talked about a very iconic moment last year. If you remember, Justin Wright Foreman hitting the game winner in a tie game here at Canada Life Center. Then he goes directly to them. They recall that moment when he went to go call them out after hitting the game winner. So maybe they become friends now, but they were not friends last year. And then, of course, the new post-game show. So there's Sea Bears post-game live. That comes to you about 10 to 15 minutes at the conclusion of every game. It's on the Sea Bears mobile app, so you can download that on the App Store, and then you'll get the notifications. And if you're there in person at the game, at the home games at Canada Life Center, we have in person actually, where you can come down to the Scotia Wealth Management Premium Club. I think I'm saying that right, but it's the lounge just below the stands, and beautiful spot. And we have post game player interviews, head coach interviews, and it'll all be piped through there. And you can come and watch.
Still open after the game?
I believe the bar is still open. Unfortunately, I'm cordoned off from the bar, so I can't tell you for sure. But I believe the bar is open. So come have a drink and come listen to the post-game show and see your favorite players and coaches and get the in real-time post-game analysis from myself and national team member / local professional basketball player Emily Potter, who's been absolutely stellar in her debut in the media realm of
Potter,
things.
that's awesome. That is great. Well, listen, I've checked it out, but I haven't done it in person. So maybe I'll have to make a point of coming down for one afterwards and seeing what you guys are cooking up. Download the Sea Bears app. All of the post-game is there at Joey Slattery TV on Insta, and don't forget Target Score Weekly with Taylor Allen for more on the CEBL. Slats, thanks for doing this. We'll see you down at the I call it the rink, but I guess it's the court now for basketball season coming up.
The
this
athletics.
Weekend.
We'll call it the Athletic Center. Yeah, we'll enjoy the game Thursday. We'll see you Sunday at the post-game show.
Canada Life Athletic Center. Sounds good. Sounds good. Take it easy. There's Joey Slattery with us. To talk a little Sea Bears. And again, Justin Wright Foreman, their big signing, second in MVP voting last year in the league. Now it's just time to go win a few more games because the record, so-so, the talent, big time. And again, it's all about getting to Montreal in August for the CEBL Championship weekend. All right, let's get to the Coolbet Lines for today. And just before we do that, I know Cowboy and I think Scott Westman and a couple of other people were asking. If you've missed it, we have a contest going on right now to join me on the Huss bus, if you will. The bus, one of the 2 buses we're bringing down to Regina for the Labor Day Classic as part of the Crew road trip. You can find out more information on that on any socials at the 1930 Crew. But the prize is going to include transportation from Winnipeg to Regina, 2 nights hotel, tickets to the Labor Day Classic, some Coolbet swag, and some more goodies from our very wonderful organizers. Coolbet has got 2 seats on the bus, and it will go to a winner of a cool better. And basically what you need to do is anytime you bet $10 on the Canadian Football League or more, and I know Schickster was asking, what if you do 2 $5 bets? That's fine. Screen cap it and send it in an email to contest@winnipegsportstalk.com. Later on this week, we will be drawing our first finalist, and every week we'll be drawing a qualifier. And then every one of those qualifiers is going to get a marble for a special marble race in the second week of August, where we give out the trip for 2. Again, I know some of you might be elsewhere. You can certainly be eligible to win, but the trip starts and leaves from Winnipeg. So if you're watching us from Edmonton or something like that, it will be tough for you to do it. But any local cool bettors, send us that slip to contest@winnipegsportstalk.com. And yeah, we'll leave, if you put them in beforehand, we'll leave those in. But again, anytime that, in future weeks that you do bet the CFL with Coolbet, just take that screen cap, send it in, give you more chances to qualify for that final draw. We don't have CFL lines yet this week. We'll get into that tomorrow. We do have a big hockey game tonight, though. Oilers +110 underdogs. Panthers -129. That's moved throughout the day. This was +115 for the Oilers and -135 earlier for the Panthers. And the series line has moved as well. When we started the lock shop today, it was +205 for the Edmonton Oilers. That has come down to +195. And I got to tell you, I think I'm rolling with the Oilers. As I said, I used the 20% win boost on the weekend for a future bet on the Oilers, and it was 1 +125. That actually brought it up to +150. And as I tweeted, as they said after the game, I think I feel better about the bet after losing game 1 3-0. I think the Oilers can win this game tonight, and I think they can win this series. If they win tonight, we won't be seeing anything like +195 hung up again. So if you do have faith in the Oil, that was a good time to get in on it over at Coolbet. U.S. Open odds are up. No surprise. Scotty Scheffler's the heavy favorite at +130. We'll get into that more in the next couple days. But the Blue Jays are back in action tonight after winning their series against the Oakland A's. The Jays are in Milwaukee to start a series. A slight dog tonight, even money +101, and the Milwaukee Brewers -119. It's all there at Coolbet for you. And again, anytime you bet the CFL, screen cap your bet, send it to contest@winnipegsportstalk.com along with your information for more chances to win and join me on the Huss Bus to the Labor Day Classic. Cannot wait for that later on this season. All right, Remo, you know what Monday means. Another week of live racing, and it's been a great start so far. I didn't have a great Wednesday, but I'm ready to get back into the winner's circle tonight. You actually turned it around a little bit, and are starting to show some of your mettle from previous years a little bit more early after a tough start.
Well, I didn't lose money on Wednesday, but I still am a bit behind you, doing my best to make that up today. No, I don't think I'm going that safe, but we'll see how it goes. We got 3 days here to try to close the gap. A lot of summer, a lot of racing season left, but I'm looking forward to seeing the track tonight. I'll be watching the Cup Final, but also have the Downs on YouTube on one of my other TVs. I love
Kirk and Stretch. It's the best. It's the best. They do such a great job at teeing you up as well. I mean, we make our picks in the afternoon to tell you them. But if you're waiting around, you can bet at hpibet.com and get some picks from the guys that really know what's up. Kirk and Stretch, they handicap every race before it happens. All right. I do not have a bet in the first 2 races. I've started in race 3 tonight, Reem. So if you've got anything in 1 or 2, let us know. Otherwise, let's get to race 3.
I do not. I'm also starting with race 3. I'm trying to start it off easy. Not the favorite, but he's the second, or this horse is the second on the program, an AI Smart pick. Billy Fatal to win. That's my pick here.
Interesting. I am actually going with. I couldn't decide on this race, and I said, you know what? Let's just go dive in head first with the triactor right away. And of the 3 horses that are the program selections, I'm only taking one of them.
Wow.
I'm taking Philly Fatale number 5. I'm also taking Miss Parfait number 3 and Streamer number 2. So a 2, 3, 5, bit of a longer shot, but if this can come in, this has the potential of being a big, big win. So 2, 3, 5 in race number 3. And then moving on to race number 4, I'm going with a couple of the ones. I'm going with an exactor box on 4 and 6. So Miss Z, and I was going to have a piece of Kim's Texas Bling. Kim's Texas Bling, one of the top horses last year, if I recall. So give me the exactor box 4664 for Miss Z and Kim's Texas Bling.
Okay, I'm not in on race 4, but I saw some big triactor boxes or triactors that finished last week. There's one that's like $1 paid like 200 something. So, go for it. Try to shoot for the moon there on that first one you mentioned. And
listen to this. I should give a shout out to my buddy Mace, who I saw yesterday at the Party of Confusion. Last Wednesday, they won the pick 4.
Oh,
$7,800.
that's pretty good.
7,800 in cash, in hand at the track. That was unbelievable. We'll try and get there at some point. Race number 5, I have just a win bet. I'm going with Side Street Dave, who I guess is the favorite right now. This is a bit of a wide open one, but $4 on Side Street Dave is my pick.
Yeah, Far Beyond, the favorite, has been scratched. Turning this race on its head. And I'm going with Side Street Dave and Dino's Cape. Dino's Cape for an exacta box there. I'm on those 2. Dino.
Nice. Do you have race 6?
I do have race 6. I got race 6 and 7. Race 6, I got a trifecta box. 1, 4, 6. Cavour, Kentucky Jake, and Cussin Cat. That's what I'm on here.
Cussin Cat's the leader. I don't have anything in race 6, but in race 7, another triactor box. The 2 of the more favorites, Chicago's Gray, number 2, Brody's Streak, number 5, and I loved this horse last year, Blazin' Bow, number 3. So 2, 3, 5 triactor box for $6. That's my final bet, trying to hit it strong. Started off with the 2, 3, 5 triactor in 3, doing the same thing in 7.
Yes, I'm also on 2, 3 here, Chicago's Gray and Blazing Bow for an exacta box. So hopefully they can finish first and second there. That's what I'm hoping for.
And then Brody's Streak come in 3rd, and then everyone's happy. There are picks for today. Again, live racing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Every week up until Labor Day at Assiniboia Downs. If you want to make a booking in the dining room for the incredible prime rib buffet, I went there with my folks a couple weeks ago. I had just an unbelievable time and an amazing meal. You can call for a reservation. I believe it's 885-3000. More information at asdowns.com for that. And we got some nice weather. Should be a perfect night to get out to the track if you haven't already done it out at Assiniboia Downs. Remo, before we go, who you got tonight?
I'm going to take Edmonton. They played so well. I mean, if they play like that again, they'll win. But again, you don't know what's going to happen. Just because they looked like that last game doesn't mean
Florida's going to be better. I know that.
Florida's going to be better. Will Bob be able to allow 0 goals? So I don't know. I think Edmonton. I think this is going to go for a while. Edmonton showed they can hang with Florida, which maybe we weren't sure about coming in. We'll see what the changes. Knobloch seems to push the right buttons as he has throughout the playoffs. So I think we go back to Edmonton split. I'll take the Oilers here, Huss.
Yeah, I'm going with the Oilers as well. I think the guys, the EST guys, did an exclusive for the game tonight. We've also got a nasty chat parlay. McDavid 2 assists, Hyman 3 shots on goal, Bouchard 2 shots on goals, 4-1.
Not bad.
Patty knows puck. What does Patty have? Zach Hyman and Brandon Montour both to record a point, and Draisaitl 3 or more shots on goal. I don't mind that one. And then the EST parlay, Connor McDavid 2 points, Hyman a goal, Oilers to win, plus 475. Maybe I'll use my $25 free bet from the UFC promo on that one for tonight. But yes, I do like the Oilers to win this game, and that would certainly make for a great final if this series comes back to Northern Alberta, all tied up at 1. Puck drops just after 7, allegedly. We'll look forward to that. I don't think that there'll be the same sort of pomp and circumstance before game 2 as that we had on before game 1. But make sure to join us tomorrow. We'll have Mike McIntyre jump in the program. We will go to Edmonton first up for the latest on the Cup Final with Tommy Gazzola. We'll have the latest on the Bombers, and we will have the full details on the launch of CFL 110 with myself and Jeff Hamilton. Additional CFL programming coming up for the upcoming season here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks again to all of you for making us a part of your day. Shout out podcast listeners, everyone with us on YouTube. If you are with us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. By the way, 11.5 on the weekend. Appreciate whoever knew just jumped on board to get us over that point. Hit that thumbs up. Last call for Gold Eyes tickets, 5 or less left. So click that link if you want to be included. That's next Tuesday, a week tomorrow. We'll look forward to having you all there. And otherwise, have a great night tonight. Enjoy game 2 of the Cup Final. And join us tomorrow for the latest around Winnipeg sports and beyond right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a good one, everyone.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.